Chapter 381, A Journey Through Time. That night, after the tumultuous events at the Ministry of Magic, Harry found himself back at 12 Grimmauld Place. The atmosphere was heavy with tension and worry. Molly Weasley, her maternal instincts in full force, was tending to the injuries of the Order of the Phoenix members. She frantically wiped the blood from Ron's face, her movements a mixture of care and urgency. Dumbledore, with a solemn expression, led Harry to a room on the 3rd floor. The room was sparsely occupied, creating an intimate yet somber setting. Dumbledore's gaze fixed on Harry, concern etched deeply in his features. "Did he hurt you?" he inquired, his voice laden with worry. The question was direct, aiming to uncover the extent of Harry's ordeal. Harry hesitated, the memories of his soul being drawn out causing him to shiver. After a brief pause, he replied, "No." He then proceeded to recount his experience in the trance and the unsettling deal with death itself. Dumbledore listened intently, his expression turning to one of disbelief and sadness as Harry spoke. "The Resurrection Stone," Dumbledore finally said, his voice a whisper of realization and regret. Harry, puzzled by Dumbledore's reaction, watched as the older wizard grappled with his emotions. John and the God of Death discussed the tale of the 3 brothers. Dumbledore explained with a rueful smile. "It seems I was mistaken once again." Harry could sense that Dumbledore was deeply troubled. "We were so close to ending it all," Dumbledore lamented, his voice tinged with remorse. "Tom was right. My mistrust led to his demise." It became clear to Harry that John had not harmed him, but had instead achieved something Dumbledore had failed to do. John had dismantled the very foundation of Dumbledore's long-term plan, accomplishing in a year what Dumbledore could not in over a decade. This revelation was a bitter pill for Dumbledore to swallow, his own distrust having shattered a seemingly perfect plan. Reflecting on his own strategy, Dumbledore looked at Harry with renewed focus. He had envisioned a plan where the soul fragment within Harry would be destroyed, but reality had unfolded differently. Harry, feeling a mix of confusion and enlightenment, realized his role as the Savior was tied to the fragment of Voldemort's soul within him. This revelation led him to question Dumbledore's intentions and whether self-sacrifice had been part of the plan. Amidst the whirlwind of revelations, Harry mentioned, "John says I'm not the Savior anymore, and about that prophecy orb, it's broken." Dumbledore's response was firm and heartfelt. "Harry, there has never been a singular Savior. What truly matters," he said, pointing to his heart, "is the courage to resist and the capacity for love. These qualities make anyone a savior." Regarding the prophecy orb, Dumbledore sighed. "It contained prophecies about you and Voldemort." With that, Dumbledore departed, leaving Harry to ponder the weight of his words. Ron, concerned for his friend, came to check on Harry. Despite his own injuries, Ron's concern was for Harry's well-being. "How's Hermione?" Harry inquired, his mind still processing the flood of information. Ron's mood darkened at the mention of Hermione. "She's taking it hard," he admitted, sitting down with a heavy heart. "She blames herself for not knowing better." As they talked, Ron tried to alleviate Harry's guilt, reminding him that they were unaware of the full scope of the situation. The conversation shifted to the mysterious figure who had emerged as powerful as Voldemort. Through hushed discussions and Moody's insights, they learned the man's identity. Gellert Grindelwald, a name that carried with it a history of darkness and defeat at the hands of Dumbledore. Their conversation was interrupted by a knock on the door. Ginny stood there, her expression somber. "Hermione is very sad," she said, her voice a soft echo of the pain they all felt. Meanwhile, a black, long-eared owl embarked on a journey to New Zealand, carrying a large bag of gold coins. The Matola macaws found themselves entangled in a peculiar situation, struggling to comprehend the significance of the gold coins that had arrived so unexpectedly. Crashing into their practice field, the chaser, adorned in a vibrant red, yellow, and blue uniform, descended towards a bag with his broomstick and opened it. After a quick inspection, he called out in a mix of frustration and resignation to the team's captain, who was also the goalkeeper, 5,000 galleons. "Again?" The captain landed, his tone laced with distress. The rest of the team followed suit, landing around them. The Seeker, with a tone of disbelief, exclaimed, "Is this the 5th time?" "That's 25,000 galleons in total. We could re-equip ourselves with firebolts for that amount, the beater said, his eyes gleaming with a hint of greed. The captain, puzzled, glanced at the team's mascot. The beater leaned in and suggested in a hushed tone, "It's just a bit of blood. Why not sell it?" "Spark is older than my grandfather," the captain replied, torn. "We have no idea what it will be used for." "Anyone willing to pay that much is not someone to be trifled with," the beater argued. The audacity to offer 25,000 galleons outright was not the mark of an ordinary person. The Matola Macaws, once a formidable team, had seen better days. Their recent performances hadn't been impressive, and local Quidditch fans were growing restless. Moreover, the mascot Spark, a phoenix and the only one domesticated outside the Dumbledore family, wasn't technically theirs but the club's, leaving them with no real authority over it. After much deliberation, the captain made a decisive call. "We'll do it, but it stays between us." The team members nodded in silent agreement, their gaze returning to Spark. The opportunity to make a substantial amount of money from just a little of its blood was too tempting to pass up. At Johnny Silverhand's store, Tangmi pondered over the 25,000 galleons spent, deep in thought. Nearby, John sat next to an unconscious Kim, holding a ring that radiated an ominous aura. "Demagogic power, a vicious curse," John mused, admiring the ring's resilience. He placed the ring in a box and cast a protective spell over it, just to be safe. "My lord, aren't you supposed to be taking an exam today?" Tangmi asked, puzzled. John replied with a hint of mystery, "I am taking an exam." Tangmi was confused, unable to grasp John's cryptic response. At that moment, a black long-eared owl returned, clutching a bottle filled with red phoenix blood. "It's time for the exam," John murmured to himself. That night, John entered the Shrieking Shack, noting the time on his pocket watch. It coincided with the astronomy exam. Casting a disillusionment charm on himself, he ventured down the passage leading out of the shack. He placed the precious phoenix blood under a stone outside. As he was about to return, Tom, a dog, approached, intrigued by the scent. "Wang wang wang," Tom barked, but John, unamused, told him to stop. Recognizing John's voice, Tom circled him before being sent off to find Fang. John then felt a gaze upon him and quickly concealed himself. The humping willow, sensing his presence, lashed out, but John skillfully immobilized it with a spell and made his way back to the shack. Upon ascending the stairs, John remembered something he had almost forgotten. He placed a box on a step, then heard footsteps approaching. Concealing himself behind a door, he listened as the footsteps neared. "What should I do?" a familiar voice pondered aloud. John quickly scribbled a note, "Live to die," and slid it through the door's crack. As the footsteps receded, he emerged from his hiding spot, still under the cloak of his spell, and paused on the stairs, bathed in moonlight, contemplating his next move. John gazed intently at the man before him, feeling a sense of wonder. It was truly astonishing to look upon his former self. As their eyes met, a myriad of questions flooded his mind. What would transpire if they acknowledged each other's raisons? The concept of two identical beings existing simultaneously was perplexing. Based on the outcomes of prior time travel experiments, such an encounter could potentially alter the course of the future. After a moment of contemplation, John decided against taking any action. He watched silently as his other self exited the Shrieking Shack. Clutching the time turner in his hand, he pondered the complexities of time travel and the delicate balance of events. The implications of his decisions weighed heavily on him, as he understood the fragility of the timeline and the importance of maintaining its integrity. Chapter 382, The Perils of Time Travel. Manipulating time is considered taboo, for its power holds the potential to obliterate the future in a single moment. Among the most challenging forces to control, time stands as a formidable entity. The Time Turner, a rare artifact capable of altering time, relies on the enchanted sand within it to function. John, with a flick of his wrist, revealed a handful of this golden sand, glowing with condensed magic. He had utilized the Time Turner to journey back and meticulously lay out his plans. Upon his return, he sensed an eerie void where his physical presence should have been. "Time and soul," John murmured, setting aside the newspaper that heralded Barty Crouch Sr.'s receipt of the Order of Merlin First Class. The aftermath of the Ministry of Magic's battle had surprisingly boosted the minister's popularity, leading to this prestigious award. The article detailed how Voldemort's forces were nearly decimated, with over 30 Death Eaters captured and subsequently returned to Azkaban after a 3-day trial. Now, Voldemort found himself isolated, with only Bellatrix Lestrange's uncertain fate as company, devoid of any followers. This marks a similar beginning to Grindelwald's era, John reflected. The resurgence of the first Dark Lord and Grindelwald's escape from his homeland had put the international magical community on high alert. Grindelwald, notorious for his persuasive prowess, had once dominated the European magical scene. Without Dumbledore's intervention, the Statute of Secrecy might have crumbled. In comparison, Voldemort seemed less of a threat, primarily because he faced a Dumbledore armed with the Elder Wand, unlike Grindelwald, who contended with a younger Dumbledore. Both Dark Lords found themselves thwarted by the same formidable adversary. "Dumbledore, your next move awaits," John noted, his attention shifting to the news of Slughorn's appointment as Hogwarts headmaster. The unanimous support from the 4 house heads, coupled with Dumbledore's recent oversight, made Slughorn's ascension inevitable. The Ministry of Magic had discreetly resolved the Umbridge debacle, dismissing her from Hogwarts and ensuring she received medical care after her ordeal in the Forbidden Forest. Meanwhile, Ozzy Hurd's commendable performance had earned him a promotion to director of the Auror office, with the ministry introducing Auror training programs under his and Lippy's supervision. Pierce had ascended to a senior position within the Wizengamot, while Percy Weasley's recent promotion precluded any further advancement for the time being. Slughorn's appointment, largely influenced by the ministry's desire to distance Hogwarts from Dumbledore, was met with approval due to his affable nature and extensive Slytherin connections. The ministry's stance was clear. Anyone but Dumbledore would suffice. "Second class? My father deserves at least the first class," Draco Malfoy grumbled, upon learning that Lucius Malfoy, along with Lippy and Barty Crouch Jr., had been awarded the second-class Order of Merlin. Despite his complaints, a hint of pride was evident in Draco's smile, especially when considering Dumbledore's removal from the headmaster position. "It's high time for a new headmaster," Draco declared, his enthusiasm barely contained. John handed a letter to Basil, who accepted it with a sense of purpose. The narrative, rich with political maneuvering and the complexities of time travel, hinted at the intricate web of actions and consequences that lay ahead. John tilted his head as he read the letter, then opened the window to let the owl out. The Great Hall at Hogwarts had suffered damage, and although it was repairable, the process would take some time. As a form of compensation, John generously donated a substantial amount of galleons to Hogwarts. At the moment, they were at Silverhand Manor, a place that even Draco Malfoy found impressive on his first visit, comparing it favorably to his own family's estate. Cedric Diggory, too, was taken aback by the grandeur of the man, or despite being aware of John's wealth as Johnny Silverhand. The sheer opulence of the place was still astonishing to witness firsthand. The reason for their visit was Cedric's impending graduation and his need to secure a job. Malfoy, puzzled, asked, "Aren't you considering a career in professional Quidditch? With your skills, a few years of training could see you playing officially." Cedric, slightly irked by the implication that he needed years of training, clarified, "Quidditch isn't my ambition. I'm more interested in pursuing Transfiguration." Malfoy, surprised, inquired further, leading John to interject. "His Transfiguration skills are unparalleled in our year. Even Professor McGonagall has praised him." Despite Cedric's father believing his son would have a brighter future in the Ministry of Magic or playing Quidditch, he respected his son's decision, especially after learning that Cedric had secured an investor, easing any concerns about his financial stability. Malfoy, curious about Cedric's plans, asked, "So, you're heading to Uganda?" Cedric confirmed his plans to study Transfiguration in Uganda, where the magical discipline was practiced with greater diversity than at home. He intended to stay for a few months, seeking John's advice and keeping abreast of international magical developments. With the current peace possibly being temporary and the threat of the Dark Lord's return looming, Cedric wanted to strengthen his abilities as soon as possible, a sentiment Malfoy shared, leading him to seek John's guidance as well. Unfortunately, John was unable to train Malfoy personally, but recommended Barty Crouch Jr., a surprisingly competent gardener and a highly skilled wizard, as a suitable instructor. After addressing their concerns, John entrusted Jin with managing Silverhand Manor in his absence, expressing his trust with the symbolic gesture of handing over a silver mask. Jin, however, voiced concerns about the safety of storing the Holy Grail at Hogwarts, given its allure to powerful figures like Voldemort and Grindelwald. John reassured him, suggesting that Hogwarts, while not the safest, was the most strategic location to protect the Grail. Leaving the manor, John visited a secret room in the garden, emerging with a new wand. With a flick, he vanished, heading to his family home on Privet Road. Upon arrival, John found Watson packing, prompting a surprised inquiry. Mrs. Wick, John's mother, greeted him warmly, explaining that they had been invited to spend the holidays at his uncle's, a gesture initiated by his grandfather. John, puzzled by not receiving an invitation himself, was shown a rather forceful letter addressed to Watson, implying that attendance was not optional. The situation hinted at underlying tensions and unresolved family dynamics, setting the stage for a potentially eventful holiday visit. John's familial status remained unchanged, a fact underscored by the absence of any mention of him in the letters he received. This neglect drove John back to seeking solace in the bottle of red potion nestled within his small bag. He sensed an oddity about his grandfather's house, a feeling that perhaps it was time to visit and uncover some answers. Upon hearing John's plans to visit, Watson's eyes immediately sparkled with excitement, though he seemed hesitant to voice his thoughts. "Why don't you use magic to take us there?" he finally suggested, inching closer to his son. Watson had been longing to experience magic firsthand, still vividly remembering their last encounter with a magical car. John gave his father a look that conveyed a mix of amusement and exasperation. Even within the magical community, unauthorized entry is punishable by imprisonment, he explained, his tone gentle yet firm. The message was clear. Fantasizing about the use of magic for personal convenience was a fruitless endeavor. Watson's face fell, and he looked at his son with a mixture of disappointment and reluctance to accept the reality. After a moment of silence, he sighed deeply and asked, "Can't you use your magic just this once?" His expression seemed to accuse John of being unhelpful. After pondering for a brief moment, John raised his hand and snapped his fingers, causing his father's luggage to scatter across the floor. "It's okay. You can clean it up again," he said, demonstrating a small, albeit practical, use of magic. This act served as a gentle reminder of the limitations and responsibilities that came with their magical abilities, emphasizing the importance of using magic wisely and within the bounds of their laws. Chapter 383: Uncovering the Secret. The recent extreme weather in London had garnered widespread attention. Eventually, the government stepped in to dispel the rumors, reassuring the citizens and allowing life to return to its usual pace. At the airport, the Wick family was preparing to board their flight. In these times, the ability to travel by plane was a luxury that only the well-off could afford. Seizing a moment when no one was paying attention, Watson discreetly took something out of his pocket. John glanced over and was surprised to see his father holding the golden snitch. What was even more astonishing was how swiftly his father reacted. He released the snitch and caught it with ease. This repeated action seemed like a playful boast to John, reminiscent of a proud peacock flaunting its feathers. "Look, after a year of practice, I've mastered catching it," Watson exclaimed with a hint of pride. Although flying on a broomstick was not an option, the thrill of secretly playing with the snitch was undeniable. John couldn't help but applaud his father's impressive reflexes before asking, "Can I try?" "Of course," Watson replied, unhesitatingly handing the snitch to John, who quickly tucked it into his bag. Watson's expression turned to one of chagrin, realizing he had been outsmarted at his own game. His previously smug look faded into disappointment. John noticed a young boy, about 6 years old, eyeing them curiously. The boy tugged at his mother's sleeve, pointing excitedly at the flying ball. "Oh, my dear, I see you like the ball," his mother responded, indulging his fascination. As they boarded the plane, John felt an unusual sense of discomfort. "After flying so many times, I'm still not used to it," he mused, considering the ease of apparition as an alternative. Shortly after takeoff, a commotion arose. John's attention was drawn to Watson, who was fumbling with his bag. A silent exchange between father and son ensued, with John turning his gaze to Mrs. Wick, who promptly corrected Watson's behavior with a maternal tug on his ear. The commotion seems to be escalating, John thought as Watson rejoined them. Their first-class cabin was relatively serene compared to the bustling economy class, where arguments were not uncommon. However, the disturbance they heard was far from ordinary. Suddenly, a man brandishing a gun burst into the first-class cabin, aiming it at a flight attendant and commanding, "Don't move." John's realization dawned on him. A hijacking, then. The situation escalated as another hijacker entered, visibly panicked and asking, "What do we do now?" The first hijacker, exuding calm, declared, "We've planted a bomb on this plane. Cooperate if you value your lives." As John processed this revelation, he noticed Watson attempting a stealthy approach, seemingly ready to confront the hijackers single-handedly. However, Watson's movements did not go unnoticed, and the second hijacker, in a state of panic, shouted, "Don't move." Watson froze, caught in a compromising position. John sighed, recognizing his father's Gryffindor bravery, albeit in a less-than-ideal situation. Resigned to intervene, John discreetly tapped his finger on the window, sending out an invisible wave that mapped the entire aircraft. He noted the presence of another hijacker outside the cabin and observed several passengers from the Maoxiong country, some of whom were vocally expressing their frustration in Russian. As the hijacker aimed his gun at Watson, intending to make an example of him, John reached for a pencil. With a swift, calculated movement, he prepared to take action, his mind racing with strategies to neutralize the threat without endangering the passengers. The tension in the cabin was palpable, but John was determined to resolve the situation with the precision and calm that had always defined his approach to crises. Silently nestled among the books, the pencil lay unnoticed. The robber, with a cruel smile spreading across his face, was unaware of the impending danger. Suddenly, he felt a sharp pain, as if bitten by an unseen force. The aftermath was chaotic, yet the plane landed safely, marking an unfortunate end for the robbers. The police escorted Watson away for questioning, needing him to explain the peculiar incident of the pencil lodged in the robber's eye. It turned out the bomb threat was a hoax, a dramatic ploy by 3 individuals who perhaps had seen too many action movies and sought to blackmail the government. John waved goodbye to his father, hoping Watson could somehow justify his actions in the unfamiliar land of Maoxiong. Mrs. Wick, relieved to be back on her native soil, seemed unaffected by Watson's predicament. At the airport, an old Santana awaited them, driven by Uncle Seriosha. His warm greeting to his sister and John, his favorite nephew, was heartfelt. Seriosha's robust pat on John's shoulder and his loud proclamation about John's growth into manhood filled the air with a sense of familial pride. Throughout this reunion, Seriosha never inquired about Watson, his brother-in-law, hinting at a complex web of family dynamics. The journey from the airport to Jovanovich's territory was filled with anticipation. The village, once under the lordship of Jovanovich, held a nostalgic charm for Mrs. Wick. The sight of the church and Jovanovich's house, the largest buildings in the village, evoked memories of a bygone era. John's attention was caught by 2 crows perched atop a tree, which Seriosha identified as the old man's pets. Despite the years, the crows seemed to remember John, reacting to his presence with a cacophony of sounds. Inside Jovanovich's house, John reunited with his grandfather, a formidable figure with a thick white beard, exuding the strength and wisdom of his years. The tender moment between Mrs. Wick and her father contrasted with the grandeur of their surroundings, revealing a deep familial bond. The grandfather's greeting to John was filled with warmth and expectation, hinting at a significant legacy awaiting John's acceptance. As the evening unfolded, a banquet celebrated the Wick family's return. Watson's late arrival, directly from police custody, added a layer of complexity to the gathering. The night was filled with traditional festivities, including copious amounts of vodka, leading to Watson's eventual surrender to sleep. Outside, the natural world seemed to mirror the human interactions, with crows and owls engaging in their silent dialogues, and Tom the dog adding to the lively atmosphere. Amidst these scenes, John was led away by his uncles, suggesting the beginning of a new chapter in his life, one deeply intertwined with the history and legacy of the Jovanovic bloodline. The destination of their journey was steeped in the history of Jovanovic, a place where all secrets were destined to be unveiled. As they approached, the air seemed to thicken with the weight of untold stories, each step forward a descent into the depths of history. The landscape around them whispered of ancient times, of secrets buried deep beneath the earth, waiting for the right moment to surface. The group moved with a sense of purpose, aware that what they were about to discover could change everything they knew about Jovanovic. The anticipation was palpable, a mix of excitement and apprehension. They knew that uncovering the past could bring enlightenment, but it could also unearth truths that some might wish remained hidden. As they finally arrived at their destination, they stood before an imposing structure, its architecture a testament to the era it was built in. It was as if the building itself was a guardian of history, standing resilient through the ages, holding within its walls the answers they sought. With a collective breath, they stepped inside, ready to confront whatever secrets lay waiting. The air inside was cool and still, as if time itself had paused in anticipation of their arrival. They moved cautiously, their eyes scanning the surroundings, every sense heightened. The deeper they ventured, the more the place seemed to come alive, as if it recognized the significance of this moment. Shadows danced along the walls, creating an eerie atmosphere that did little to deter their resolve. Finally, they reached the heart of the structure, where the most closely guarded secrets of Jovanovic were said to reside. Here, in this sacred space, they prepared to uncover the truth, to shine a light on the shadows of the past. As they began to unravel the mysteries that had been kept from the world for so long, they realized that what they were discovering was more profound than they had imagined. The history of Jovanovic was not just a tale of events long past, but a living, breathing entity that had shaped the very fabric of their reality. With each secret revealed, they felt a shift, a realignment of their understanding of the world. It was as if they were not merely uncovering the past, but also shaping the future. In the end, as they emerged from the depths of history, they were not the same people who had entered. They carried with them the weight of knowledge, the responsibility of ensuring that the secrets of Jovanovic were honored and preserved. The journey to the heart of Jovanovic's history had been a transformative experience, one that would forever mark their lives. They had sought the truth, and in finding it, they had discovered much more than they had bargained for. Chapter 384, Journey to the Mountains. In the vast territory of the Jovanovic family, the landscape is dominated by rugged mountains and dense thickets of thorns. Their residence, though not a castle, is nestled among these imposing mountains, creating a sense of grandeur and mystery. After a grand banquet, Uncle Alexei approached John. Unlike his other uncles, Andrei and Seryozha, Alexei exuded a youthful yet wise aura. He was also the one who had left the mysterious potion for John. "John," he began, his voice carrying a mix of warmth and solemnity, "choosing to return here signifies your acceptance of your true self." With a gentle toss, Alexei threw a nut into the air. A crow swiftly descended, snatching the nut before it could hit the ground. Watching the crow, Alexei smiled and turned back to John. "You haven't used that potion yet, have you?" "I want to understand," John replied, his tone earnest. "I want to uncover the secrets of the Jovanovic family and the nature of that unusual potion." "You possess both intelligence and caution," Alexei observed, admiration evident in his voice. "You are indeed a blessing to the Jovanovic family." John remained silent, absorbing Alexei's words. He had always known his grandfather's family held him in high regard, a fact underscored by his name, Yadani, which means a gift from God. However, it wasn't until the arrival of the mysterious potion and his uncles that John began to peel back the layers of secrecy surrounding his family, revealing connections to the magical world he hadn't previously considered. "When midnight arrives, the mountains will unveil all their secrets," Alexei said, his voice tinged with a hint of melancholy as he ruffled John's hair. "If it's within your heart to do so, I hope you can fully embrace us and all that we are." His words trailed off, carried away by the wind, as he returned to the lobby to join Watson in refilling their drinks. The family's wine cellar, hidden beneath the manor, was a source of pride, boasting an array of home-brewed wines. Watson, feeling the urge to escape the overwhelming hospitality of his uncles, found himself unable to leave. Had it not been for their grandfather's insistence on respecting his son-in-law, Watson might have found himself in a less dignified exit. As John gazed up at the moon, an owl arrived, delivering a letter. Casting a glance back at his uncles, he carefully opened the letter. "Grindelwald has vanished," read the solitary line that caught his eye. After a moment of contemplation, John allowed the letter to burn to ashes in his palm, the embers scattering in the wind. The mention of Grindelwald stirred a sense of unease in John. He came seeking the Holy Grail, but how did he know of it? The mystery surrounding Grindelwald's intentions lingered in John's mind, his fingers absently tracing the ring he wore. Grindelwald's ambitions differed markedly from Voldemort's. While Voldemort sought to elevate pure-blood wizards above all, Grindelwald envisioned a world where wizards reigned supreme over muggles, challenging the very foundation of the secrecy that protected the magical community. The era of Grindelwald's reign was marked by his followers' widespread influence across Europe, making him a formidable adversary. "This man poses a greater threat than Voldemort," John mused, disliking the uncertainty of facing an unseen enemy. Moreover, Grindelwald's possession of Dumbledore's Elder Wand added a layer of complexity to the situation. Reflecting on the historic duel of 1945, where Dumbledore emerged victorious over Grindelwald, John found some solace. The battle had concluded with Grindelwald's imprisonment in Nurmengard, yet his sudden reappearance after 50 years was disconcerting. Let Dumbledore handle his old friend, John decided, shifting his focus to the task at hand, securing the Horcrux from the Order of the Phoenix. With the magical world's fate seemingly resting on Dumbledore's shoulders, John felt a measure of relief, knowing that the likelihood of facing two Dark Lords simultaneously at Hogwarts was slim. As midnight approached, John set out for the High Mountains, a place familiar to him from past hunting expeditions. Hidden within these mountains lay a cave, a destination that held significance for both John and his uncle Andre, who had guided him there. At the outset, John found himself mysteriously drawn to the mountain, a place he had been taken away from by Mrs. Wick, but to which he had now returned. This time, as he set foot on the mountain, he noticed something he hadn't before. The elements around him seemed unusually active. Could the uncles be wizards? He wondered, pushing aside his doubts to continue his journey. Suddenly, a roar broke the silence. John turned to see a large brown bear, standing on its hind legs, aggressively slapping a tree trunk and snapping a small tree in half. The bear had noticed John and charged towards him, its massive form causing birds to scatter in panic. John, however, remained calm and commanded, "Stop." Unsurprisingly, the bear did not heed his words and prepared to attack. In response, John's eyes narrowed, his pupils transforming into vertical slits as he emitted a powerful aura of dominance. The bear immediately froze, its aggressive demeanor replaced by one of submission as it whimpered, begging for mercy. "This bear," John mused, recalling the cubs he had seen in the mountains. Approaching the now docile bear, he commented on its spiritual nature and rubbed its belly, noting the comfort of its fur. After a moment, he smiled and allowed the bear to leave, which it did gratefully, licking John's arm in thanks. Continuing his journey, John pondered whether the bear's appearance was a test, especially given its presence in Jovanovich's territory, a place where such encounters were unlikely without the uncle's consent. As he ventured further, John encountered more wildlife, 3 bobcats, a wild lion, and even a venomous snake hidden in the dense grass. The abundance of such creatures made him question the nature of the area. Upon reaching the entrance of an alpine cave, John was greeted by the howl of a silver wolf, its fur gleaming in the moonlight. The wolf watched from a distance as John entered the cave, which housed a tunnel that stretched into the darkness like a devouring serpent. Thanks to his night vision, John could see strange writings and murals depicting magical creatures such as griffins, hippogriffs, giant spiders, werewolves, banshees, and more, alongside scenes of Vikings and sea monsters. The murals told a story of change, from Vikings to knights in plate armor and leather, battling magical creatures for their kingdom. The kingdom once traded treasures with a wizard-like figure for aid against these creatures. But when the wizard ceased the transactions, the kingdom suffered greatly. In desperation, they sought a magician who provided them with a potion that granted them strength at the cost of their lifespan. They used this power to hunt down an evil wizard who sought revenge on the king by spreading a plague. John's journey through the cave revealed a rich tapestry of history and magic, hinting at the complex relationship between humans and the magical world. As he delved deeper, he couldn't help but feel that these ancient stories were somehow connected to the mysterious elements and creatures he had encountered on his way to the mountain. In a kingdom fraught with peril, a single young man emerged as the sole survivor of a deadly confrontation. His bravery and resilience did not go unnoticed by the king, who generously rewarded him with a fiefdom and a fortune vast enough to sustain 10 lifetimes of luxury. However, this young man, now a lord, approached his newfound status with an abundance of caution, particularly when it came to dealings with the enigmatic fountain mage. Unlike others, he refrained from consuming the mage's potion, choosing instead to embark on a lengthy period of research. Through his diligent study, he not only altered the potion's composition, but also transformed his estate into a sanctuary for orphans left destitute by various calamities. Under his guardianship, these orphans flourished, and as they reached adulthood, they pledged their allegiance to the kingdom that had once sheltered them. However, the tranquility of their service was soon disrupted. The kingdom, facing unseen threats from within, altered the mandate of these loyal servants. Their mission expanded beyond the mere hunting of magical creatures. They were now tasked with a far more sinister objective. The king decreed that they must root out and eliminate any individuals who posed a threat to the kingdom's stability. This new directive was a grim one, and it was succinctly summarized by the term witch hunt. John, reflecting on the gravity of their new mission, ran his fingers over the emblem of a figure brandishing a silver sword on his back. The weight of the task ahead was not lost on him, and the term witch hunt echoed ominously in his mind. The path they were about to embark on was fraught with moral ambiguity and peril, a stark departure from the noble pursuits they had once undertaken in the name of the kingdom. Chapter 385, Witnessing History. Under the tutelage of royal wizards and lords generously compensated by the kingdom, the adopted children began to tread divergent paths. Each reacted uniquely to a novel potion. Some transformed into strong, ferocious bears, others into sensitive, swift cats. A few became serpents with venomous blood and the ability to blend into shadows, and there were those who turned into wolves, symbolizing unity and innovation. These transformations led to the emergence of new classifications over the years. This legion, seemingly invincible, was ultimately undone by the kingdom's distrust and the populace's rejection. They left the kingdom, wandering the lands. To those who encountered them, they were known as demon hunters or witch hunters, though they were neither wizards nor ordinary humans. The potion's side effects eventually led to the legion's decline, yet leaving only a few of mixed bloodlines to continue their work of slaying magical creatures and adopting orphaned children as their successors. Occasionally, they would surface as witch hunters, facing a world where not all wizards were allies. The tunnel's end opened into a wider space where John found his grandfather and uncles awaiting him. His grandfather, with a gentle and benevolent smile, inquired, "Yadani, have you witnessed our history?" John surveyed the gathering, noting the absence of his mother, but the presence of all Jovanovich's children. He produced a potion bottle from his bag, identical to the one consumed by those in the past. Behind his grandfather stood a castle, ingeniously constructed within the mountain's heart. "Is Jovanovich a lineage of witchers?" John deduced. His grandfather smiled, gesturing for John to approach. For a moment, John feared his magical abilities had been discovered and that he was to be hunted. However, dismissing this as improbable, he stepped forward. Inside the castle, at its heart, lay a spring with a sword embedded beside it, reminiscent of the fountain mage depicted in ancient murals. "This is our origin, and the Jovanovich line faces its twilight," his grandfather lamented, surrounded by relics of a bygone era when witchers roamed freely. The uncles, representing the last of the witchers, shared a moment of silence. A majestic silver wolf approached, sitting elegantly by the spring, embodying the unity that only the wolf clan could achieve. In the past, we bartered with mages for extraordinary powers, a gift intertwined with a curse, the grandfather explained, his voice heavy with nostalgia. He revealed that the wolf clan had once been led by another who relinquished her role for love. Seated in a grand chair, he caressed the silver wolf, his gaze fixed on John. Your arrival, Yadani, was an unforeseen beacon of hope, he confessed, his voice trembling. John, puzzled by the reference to an accidental child, sought clarification. Alexei stepped forward, revealing a harsh truth. Great power comes with a grave curse, one that severs bloodlines. Your mother, my sister, was a Jovanovich, and your birth was a miracle. John, taken aback, realized the implications. So you're not actually grandfather's children? He questioned, trying to understand the complex lineage. The grandfather confirmed, the Jovanovich bloodline has never been passed down directly, Yadani. You are the sole exception. Stunned by the revelation, John inquired about his mother, learning she had once been the esteemed leader of the Silver Wolf clan before choosing love over her heritage. As the truth unfolded, John stood amidst the remnants of a once proud lineage, grappling with his unique place in a history marked by sacrifice, power, and the relentless march of time. John coughed repeatedly upon hearing the name Gringo. He thought to himself, my father couldn't even secure a proper name? That's truly unfortunate. The atmosphere shifted as his grandfather addressed him, the warmth in his voice giving way to a more serious tone. Yadani Jovanovich, are you prepared to embrace your true self? Not only his grandfather, but also his uncles turned their attention towards him. Their expressions varied. Some appeared ready for action, while others seemed concerned. A mission prompt suddenly echoed in John's mind. Initiate challenge mission, awaken the blood. Reward, any attribute +1, blessing leadership. John fell silent for a moment before voicing his concerns. I need to understand. What exactly is the role of a witcher now? As a wizard, isn't it problematic to task me with hunting other wizards? I understand your reservations, child, his grandfather responded, shaking his head. You possess magic within you, correct? It was clear that his uncles had noticed John's magical abilities during their last encounter. With a slight smile, his grandfather continued, we are not inflexible. The inception of the Witcher was deeply intertwined with that of the wizard. In the history of the Jovanovich family, our focus has primarily been on eliminating monsters that plague our towns rather than confronting fellow wizards, he explained. The twinkle in his grandfather's eye momentarily gave John the impression he was speaking with Dumbledore himself. Perhaps it was the elder's way of connecting with the younger generation. John hesitated, contemplating the future of the Witcher profession and the implications his grandfather had outlined. The potion required for the ritual promised to awaken his blood's power, but at a significant physical toll. Weighing the pros and cons, John eventually nodded slowly, meeting his grandfather's hopeful gaze. With a smile, his grandfather announced, under the witness of the Silver Wolf, let Yadani Jovanovich, son of Jovanovich, undergo the trial of the grasses. As he spoke, the spring water at the center began to roil as if boiling, only to calm moments later. Approaching the spring, John felt an inexplicable urge to jump in. Drink the potion, Yadani, his grandfather instructed softly. John glanced at his uncles before uncorking the bottle and consuming its contents in one swift motion. Initially, he felt nothing, but a sharp, burning pain soon spread throughout his body. As his vision blurred and his legs wobbled, his grandfather and uncles gathered around him. My child Yadani, you are a child of chance, and the legacy of our blood relies on its continuation, the old man said, slicing his palm open. The bright red blood flowed into the spring, followed by similar actions from his uncles. Their blood transformed into various animals, symbolizing their family's diverse strengths. The blood of Jovanovich shall protect Yadani. The blood of the Witcher shall cleanse him of all misfortune and curses, they proclaimed as the spring water turned crimson. John, guided by an unseen force, stepped into the blood-infused waters. His uncles knelt by the spring, hands over their hearts, as his grandfather's voice took on an otherworldly quality. "Let blood and fire forge your strength, and from it may your true self arise, Yadani." The silver wolf handed his grandfather a bottle containing a black liquid, which was then poured into the spring. Drawing a sword, his grandfather struck the stones surrounding the spring, igniting the blood-red waters with a fiery blaze. Despite the flames, the uncles remained stoic, unflinching in their resolve. John stepped fully into the spring, the flames enveloping him, yet he felt an overwhelming sense of transformation and empowerment rather than pain. John's body was unresponsive, unable to be roused from his deep slumber. His consciousness, tethered to the ebb and flow of the spring water, drifted into a hazy oblivion. As if undergoing a baptism, his vision was engulfed in a sea of red, signaling the slow return of his awareness. Amidst this resurgence, the once muffled sounds around him began to crystallize into discernible voices, calling out to him with increasing clarity. "Yadani Jovanovich," they echoed, as if beckoning him from afar. Gradually lifting his head, John's surroundings morphed from a blur into the stark reality of an ancient castle, dull, desolate, and devoid of life. Blinking his eyes open, he found himself lying in the spring water, the ambience now shrouded in darkness and an eerie silence. Rising to his feet, he called out tentatively, "Grandpa? Uncle Seriosha?" But his voice met only the cold embrace of silence. Next to the spring, the sword lay untouched, gathering dust as if forgotten by time itself. Curiosity piqued, John reached for his small bag, intending to gauge the passage of time, but he halted abruptly. A chilling presence made itself known, its approach heralded by the sound of footsteps growing louder and more ominous. Lifting his gaze, John's eyes widened as a shadowy figure burst forth from the tunnel. In the blink of an eye, a gaping maw, dripping with blood, loomed before him, threatening to engulf him whole. Chapter 386, Entering the Trial. After a moment of contemplation by the spring, John found himself pondering his surroundings. Is this where I'm meant to be? The ancient castle, unfamiliar and imposing, made him question if he had somehow crossed into another realm. His gaze fell upon a wild boar, its sharp tusks cleanly severed. The weapon of choice? A sword lying next to the spring. With a simple gesture, John sent the boar's body flying. My magic is intact, at least. That's a relief. Suddenly, a notification chimed in his mind. Ding, challenge mission, dream trial, reward, any point +1. The mission was vague, lacking a clear objective. John surmised this must be the trial mentioned. The realism of his surroundings was uncanny. Had it not been for the wild boar's sudden appearance, he might not have reached for the sword at all. Dusting himself off, John examined the spring once more. Its waters were crystal clear, offering no hint of a return path. It seemed he had no choice but to complete the trial to find his way back. Luckily, his small bag was with him. Upon inspection, he found it contained numerous items, though not all were as useful as before. His magical amulets and rings had been reduced to mere trinkets. Picking up a ring of strike, he noted the absence of its magical essence. Approaching the fallen boar, John withdrew the sword. Inspecting the blade, he noticed runes etched along its edge, glowing faintly with a blood-red light absorbed from the boar. Is this experience? He mused, likening the process to gaining levels in a game by defeating monsters. He ventured out of the cave, noting the absence of the murals that once adorned the walls. The smooth, bare surfaces suggested they had never existed. Emerging into the night, he was greeted by a landscape blanketed in snow, prompting deep reflection. A chilling gust hinted at recent animal activity near the cave's entrance, likely the boars. As the snowfall intensified, John caught a snowflake, its coldness indistinguishable from reality. Through the blizzard, he spotted a figure struggling towards him, only to collapse. Casting a spell, John dragged the figure to the cave's entrance for a closer look. The man's attire, simple linen clothes, seemed out of place, belonging to a bygone era. As the temperature plummeted, John decided to bring the man into the castle for shelter. Inside, the castle's eerie atmosphere was amplified by its dilapidated state. Finding a chair, John magically transformed it into firewood and ignited a flame, warming the surroundings. Upon awakening the man with a spell, his initial reaction was one of terror. "Monster!" he exclaimed, misunderstanding his rescuer's intentions. Realizing his mistake, the man fell to his knees, overwhelmed by fear. After calming down, The man shared his story. His fear stemmed from local legends surrounding the mountain's mysterious and ominous reputation. As a hunter, he had ventured into the mountains only to find himself caught in the trial's web. John listened intently, piecing together the trial's nature from the hunter's tale. It was clear that this trial was not only a test of strength and magic, but also of understanding and compassion. Stranded on a snow-covered mountain, John found himself inadvertently stumbling upon a new world, one that seemed to be frozen in time, reminiscent of a medieval kingdom. It was a place where technology was absent, and danger lurked in the form of magical creatures and nefarious wizards. His guide in this unfamiliar land was a man named Parker, who, after initial apprehensions, warmed up to John upon realizing he posed no threat. Parker was astounded to see the wild boar John had slain, a feat that earned him immediate respect and an earnest request for help. "My lord, I hope you can address our werewolf problem," Parker implored, quickly adding, "Of course, our village will compensate you for your troubles." Considering his current predicament, John saw merit in visiting the village. As the snow ceased, they descended the mountain, arriving at a quaint village that was starkly different from anything John had known. The villagers, dressed in medieval attire, eyed him with curiosity. Parker led John to a more opulent house and knocked. The door creaked open, revealing an elderly, hunched-over village chief, surprised yet relieved to see Parker alive. "Parker, you've survived?" he exclaimed before his attention turned to the werewolf issue. However, upon seeing John, skepticism clouded his face. Despite Parker's attempts to vouch for John's strength, the village chief remained unconvinced, citing the fates of previous would-be heroes who had attempted to confront the werewolf. John, unfazed by the chief's doubts, expressed his willingness to try regardless. The chief, however, was adamant about not wanting John to risk his life needlessly. John, respecting the chief's concern, decided not to press the matter further, much to Parker's dismay. As they left the chief's house, Parker was anxious, fearing for his safety against the werewolf. John reassured him, indicating that he didn't need the village chief's approval to act. He planned to confront the werewolf on his own terms, to assess the situation firsthand. Understanding the practicalities of his new environment, John handed Parker an emerald ring, instructing him to sell it for appropriate clothing and some local currency. The gems, devoid of any magical properties in this world, were better off exchanged for necessities. John had ventured into the transaction with the gem for financial reasons, underestimating its power. When Parker returned, he brought with him clothes, but the gem remained unsold, its value surpassing what anyone in the vicinity could afford. "We'll need to reach the town to find a buyer for this," Parker concluded, having purchased the clothes with his own money. Left with no other option, John accepted the gem back and donned the new attire, blending seamlessly with the local populace. They spent 2 days in the village, biding their time until the night of the full moon. As the moon reached its zenith, Parker secluded himself indoors, trembling with fear, while John was alerted to the situation by the eerie howling of wolves. Adjusting his clothes and arming himself with his sword, John stepped outside to confront the source of the disturbance. Bathed in the moonlight stood a werewolf, its form gaunt and imposing. As a wizard, John was well aware that werewolves were transformed humans. He noticed a rope dangling from the creature's neck, a clear sign it had escaped. The werewolf was ominously positioned near the village chief's home, signaling potential danger to its inhabitants. With a steady hand, John unsheathed his sword, locking eyes with the werewolf, which had now taken notice of him. "I wonder if a bite here would result in contagion," John pondered aloud, moments before the werewolf charged at him. The confrontation was inevitable. John, standing his ground under the full moon, prepared to face the werewolf, his mind racing with strategies to subdue the creature without causing harm to the human trapped within. The night air was charged with tension, the outcome of their encounter hanging in the balance. Chapter 387, Encounter with a Werewolf. John, renowned for his expertise on werewolves, encountered one that defied his expectations. Unlike the typical short-haired variety, this werewolf boasted long, silver locks that shimmered under the moonlight. As it lunged at John, he prepared to strike with his sword. However, A glimpse of the werewolf's eyes, filled with pain and suffering, made him hesitate. His sword swerved at the last moment, slicing through the air and merely grazing the creature's silver mane. "Ouch!" The werewolf yelped, but its resolve didn't waver. John, quick on his feet, conjured ropes from his wand, binding the werewolf securely. Despite its restraints, the werewolf snarled, attempting to bite him. John narrowly avoided the attack, though his sleeve wasn't as fortunate. "Stop!" a voice echoed through the night. An elderly figure hurried towards them, positioning himself between John and the werewolf. The old man's presence was the only thing preventing the werewolf from attacking further, thanks to John's timely intervention with the ropes. "Village head?" John remarked, a hint of irony in his voice. "I didn't expect this from you." The village head, with desperation in his eyes, pleaded, "My lord, please, I implore you not to harm her. I'll do anything. Just let her go." John's expression hardened. "You're aware of the danger she poses on a full moon night. Keeping her in the village is a risk to everyone." The village head collapsed to his knees, tears streaming down his face. "I know, but she's my daughter. I can't just abandon her." "Daughter?" John's tone was light, yet laced with sarcasm. "A father's love, indeed, but what of the others? This isn't a matter to be taken lightly." The village head, pale and trembling, knew he had to convince John. "My daughter was cursed by a wolf witch. It's not her fault she's like this." He recounted the tragic tale. 6 months prior, a charming traveler visited their village, claiming to be a businessman. The village head's daughter, Pekel, grew fond of him. However, one night, Pekel discovered the traveler's true nature, a monstrous werewolf, after following him into a swamp. Terrified, she returned home, only for the traveler to reappear days later, proposing to take her away. When Pekel refused, the traveler cursed her out of spite, dooming her to transform into a werewolf under the full moon. John listened intently, his sword still poised. The village head's story painted a picture of a family caught in a nightmare, a father desperate to protect his daughter from a fate she didn't choose. The complexity of the situation weighed on John. He had to make a decision, one that balanced justice with compassion. Under the light of the second month's full moon, the village was awakened by a chilling howl. In the pitch darkness, a pair of eerie, green eyes flashed ominously. The village chief, fraught with worry for his daughter, rushed to her room only to find it empty. The following day, a horrifying scene unfolded. A villager lay dead, his body bearing the marks of a wild beast, and the chief's daughter was found beside him, unharmed but visibly shaken. The village was gripped by fear as, with each full moon, another life was claimed. The howls of wolves echoed through the night, instilling terror and leading to the grim realization that werewolves lurked among them. In a desperate attempt to protect his daughter and their secret, the village chief confined her to their home. Pekel, the chief's daughter, tormented by her monstrous transformations, pleaded with her father to end her life, to no avail. Despite being restrained, she inevitably broke free during the full moon, leaving a trail of death in her wake. "My lord, my daughter is a victim, cursed by that wolf witch," the village chief proclaimed, hoping to garner John's sympathy. However, John's expression remained impassive, his gaze piercing. "So, you've been protecting your daughter?" John inquired. "Yes, my lord," the village chief affirmed, though John could not see the desperation in his eyes. Meanwhile, in a secluded alpine castle, John's uncles reflected on the nature of the trial John faced, a test known as the heart of a werewolf, designed to reveal one's true character through difficult choices. Alexei, having faced a similar trial, shared his decision to eliminate the wolf witch, viewing it as the root of all evil. John, however, focused on the consequences of the village chief's actions. "What about the villagers?" he pressed, challenging the chief's justification for his daughter's actions and the sacrifices made to protect her. John pointed out the chief's greed and lust for power, revealing that the villagers had been paying him in hopes of ridding themselves of the werewolf menace, a task at which he had failed, choosing instead to profit from their fear. Confronted with John's accusations, the village chief had no defense. Under the threat of John's sword, he disclosed the location of the wolf witch, hinting at a sinister connection between the witch and his daughter. John, determined to confront the true source of the village's suffering, prepared to face the wolf witch, his resolve unwavering. The fate of the village and the truth behind the werewolf curse hung in the balance as he ventured into the heart of darkness, guided by a sense of justice and a desire to end the cycle of fear and violence. John, with a contemplative stroke of his chin, remarked, "It does seem a bit peculiar." Peckle's transformation into a werewolf wasn't complete, suggesting something unusual had occurred on the day he was bitten. After a moment of observation, John employed a spell to levitate a large stone. Stealthily moving behind the distressed werewolf, he aimed carefully and struck it on the back of the head. The impact was met with a loud crash, followed by the sound of the werewolf collapsing onto the ground, the stone shattering upon impact. "Pecker!" cried the village chief in anguish. After a brief pause, John drew his wand and pointed it at the village chief, who was overcome with grief. A burst of red light emanated from the wand, and the village chief fell to the ground, unconscious. The commotion seemed to have alarmed Parker, who had been hiding in his home. He peeked outside through a slightly open door, only to hastily shut it again upon seeing John dragging the werewolf and the unconscious village chief towards his house. The door, however, was no barrier for John, who forcefully kicked it open and tossed the village chief inside. "Watch him," John commanded Parker with a stern voice before dragging the werewolf's body out of the village. A long trail was left in the snow, marking their path. Inside, Parker wiped the sweat from his brow and glanced at the village chief with a mix of fear and pity, feeling an overwhelming urge to cry. The situation had escalated beyond his wildest fears, leaving him in a state of shock and disbelief. Chapter 388, I Confront the Wolf Witch. On the southern edge of the village lay a wetland swamp, its surface covered in a layer of black ice due to the cold weather. As John approached, the pungent smell of blood filled the air. He crouched by a tree, uncovering a cluster of plants hidden beneath. "Wolfbane," he muttered, examining the aconitum before stuffing a few into his bag and heading in a different direction. Suddenly, a wolf's howl pierced the silence. John looked up to see a werewolf standing on its hind legs, savagely tearing into a small animal, its innards spilled out in a gruesome display. The werewolf paused its ferocious activity, sniffing the air alertly. John noticed signs of awakening in Peekle and swiftly kicked her in the neck, causing her head to loll to the side. "It seems dawn is still a while away," he mused, calculating the time until sunrise before hoisting Peekle up onto a tree branch. John's attention returned to the swamp werewolf, which was now prowling closer, yet it failed to look up. John eyed the creature, contemplating whether a leap and a swift sword strike would end it. However, he chose to remain still, waiting in the tree until the sky began to lighten. Beside him, Peekle's fur receded, revealing the form of a woman with fair skin dotted with brown freckles and brown hair. As she reverted to her human form, Peekle slowly regained consciousness, confusion and fear evident in her eyes. She realized she was suspended in the air, the rope biting into her skin, causing immense pain. "Peckle," John called from below, drawing her attention to her surroundings, the very place of her nightmares. Upon seeing the young man below, Peckle let out a scream, her expression one of alienation and terror. The young man, pained by her reaction, took a step back. "Werewolf, state your name," John commanded, sitting cross-legged on the branch, Steph, a hand resting on his cheek. The young man, noticing John for the first time, glanced at the sword on John's back, a sense of dread settling in. "My name is Marin, sir. Could you please release Peekle?" "Marin?" John's lips curled into a slight smile. With a flick of his wrist, he conjured a small flame that severed the rope. Peekle screamed, and without hesitation, Marin rushed to catch her. "Get away from me," Peekle sobbed, pushing Marin away. "Stay back, you monster." Marin retreated hastily, and Peekle, freed from the rope, attempted to flee. "Peekle, don't you want to know the truth?" John's voice halted her. She looked up, questioning, "Who are you?" "You can call me Yadini," John replied with a shrug. "For now, I'm a witcher." "Witcher?" Both Peekle and Marin's expressions shifted. Marin, in particular, produced a wooden stick resembling a magic wand. "So the rumors are true. You're a wolf witch adept in magic." John regarded Marin with surprise. It was uncommon for werewolves, often looked down upon in the magical world, to possess magical abilities. "What magic do you know?" he inquired, genuinely curious. The magic I know is beyond your imagination, Marin declared, a hint of defiance in his tone. John, feeling his legs numb from the weight, jumped down from the tree. There are some questions I need answers to, he said, extending his hand towards Marin. Don't come any closer, Marin yelled, panic evident in his voice. John, growing impatient, raised his hand and effortlessly used a spell to seize the object Marin was holding. Marin, taken aback by the Witcher's magical prowess, realized he had underestimated John. John dragged Mullen away, his grip tight around the wizard's neck. His eyes, now with vertical pupils, bore into Mullen's with an intensity that left no room for defiance. Don't test my patience, wizard, he warned. With a swift motion, John snatched the wand, resembling a rolling pin, from Mullen's grasp and flung him beneath a tree. Drawing his sword, he threw it with such precision that the silver tip pierced through the tree trunk, narrowly missing Mullen. The sight was enough to make Mullen break out in a cold sweat, and even Akel, who was hidden behind the tree, was visibly shaken. The message was clear. John's aim was deadly, and his threats were not to be taken lightly. As the tension eased, Mullen shared his story with John, revealing a tale of misfortune and guilt. He was a wizard who had been bitten by a werewolf during a journey, cursed to transform into the creature himself. To avoid harming others, Mullen would isolate himself during the full moon, but one fateful night, he accidentally injured someone. That someone was Pakel, who had stumbled upon him just as the full moon was waning. In a moment of lucidity, Mullen had attempted to heal Pakel with his wand, hastily concocting a potion from the herbs he had on hand. Ridden with guilt over the incident, Mullen had intended to take Pakel away from the village for her safety, but the village chief vehemently opposed the idea. With no other choice, Mullen retreated to the swamp, where he continued to transform with each full moon, unable to prevent Pakel from doing the same. In his despair, he had hoped that by spreading the word of the werewolves, others might succeed where he had failed and put an end to their cursed existence. Pakel, upon hearing this, was heartbroken. "You wanted someone else to kill me?" she asked, disbelief and hurt evident in her voice. "I thought you cared for me." Mullen, unable to face her, turned away, his voice heavy with remorse. "Living like this, it would be too painful for you, Pickle. I know you're kind-hearted. You don't deserve to become a monster like me." John, who had been listening intently, now held the rolling pin wand in his hand, contemplating the tragic story he had just heard. Meanwhile, Alexei, who had been observing from a distance, found himself at a loss for words when questioned by Anton about the encounter. Facing the werewolf, I didn't know what to say, he admitted, embarrassed. His grandfather sighed, reflecting on Alexei's sensitive nature, a trait he inherited from his mother. The family mused over their nephew's qualities, attributing them to Mrs. Wick, while dismissing Watson Wick's contribution as merely biological. The Jovanovich family, along with others, watched eagerly to see what John's decision would be. Pekel, understanding that Mullen's actions were not intentional, confronted him with a mix of emotions. "You bastard, you called someone to kill me," she accused, her slap echoing through the air. Mullen accepted her anger in silence. Now it was John's turn to decide. As a witcher, his instinct was to eliminate the werewolves to prevent further harm. However, as a wizard, his decision was not as straightforward. Drawing his sword from the tree, he pointed its gleaming tip at Mullen and Pekel. "Pekel, despite your transformation being accidental, you have taken lives," he stated, his voice carrying the weight of judgment. Pekel, accepting her fate, knelt before John, her guilt overwhelming her. "Demon Hunter, I am truly remorseful for my actions," she confessed, bracing herself for the end. John placed his sword against her neck, and in that moment Pekel closed her eyes, ready to face death with dignity. Mullen, realizing the gravity of his own role in the tragedy, intervened. "Wait," he pleaded, rushing forward. "I am the root of all this. If not for me, Pekel would never have become a werewolf. Take my life instead." With a swift motion, John drove his sword through Mullen's body. As Mullen fell, bleeding, Pekel's scream pierced the air. She rushed to his side, tears streaming down her face, begging him not to leave her. Amidst their poignant farewell, John revealed a surprising truth. "You're a wizard, Mullen. A sword wound shouldn't be fatal for you." Mullen, who had braced himself for death, looked up in shock, realizing that his end was not as imminent as he had thought. John had no intention of escalating the violence further. With a tone tinged with apprehension, he inquired, "What are you planning to do?" Casting a glance at Pakel, who appeared bewildered and fearful, John's sword swiftly pierced her abdomen, the blade sliding through cleanly before being withdrawn. "As punishment, you are to leave the village from this moment forward," John declared, methodically shaking the blood from his sword. He refrained from using his sword again. This decision both shocked and pleased Mullen, yet he found himself puzzled by John's mercy. Even the elder of the village and his family, who had been observing the scene, were perplexed by the decision to release the werewolf, fearing it might lead to future chaos. At that moment, the elder considered John's actions overly lenient. However, John offered a reassuring smile. For a werewolf, there are always solutions. As one of the creators of the wolfsbane potion, he glanced towards the herbs nearby. Nevertheless, the cost of someone's life must be accounted for. His gaze settled on Paker as he stated indifferently, "You are to gather 100 gold coins as restitution for those you have harmed." In that era, 100 gold coins was a substantial sum, enough to quell the thirst for vengeance. It was noteworthy that the entire village had only managed to collect 10 gold coins for the werewolf's bounty. The task set before Pecker was daunting, and survival meant adhering to this singular path. "Paker, I will stand by you through this," Mullen declared, pressing against Paker's bleeding wound. Their eyes locked in a moment of deep affection, and they reached a silent agreement. Suddenly, a radiant white light emanated from the pair, converging into the rune inscribed on John's sword. The rune ignited with light, marking the beginning of their challenging journey ahead. Chapter 389, A Witcher's Choice. John understood the essence of the dream trial. It wasn't merely about vanquishing foes, but also a profound lesson in the resilience of the human spirit. The village chief, with a heavy heart, handed John 10 gold coins as a token of gratitude for dealing with the werewolves. Despite the pain it caused him, he expressed his thanks respectfully. "Dear Witcher, thank you for sparing my daughter's life." The village chief was deeply grateful. Even though his daughter could no longer remain in the village, her life was saved. Parting with the gold coins was a painful sacrifice for him. John, observing the villagers gathered outside, responded with a hint of indifference. "You're welcome, but remember, forgiveness has not been granted." With those words, he departed, leaving the village chief puzzled by his meaning. However, the village chief's confusion was short-lived. The angry villagers, fueled by the truth revealed by Parker, nearly razed his house to the ground. Upon learning of the village chief's daughter's actions, they directed their wrath towards him. Dressed in his medieval attire, John exited the mayor's house and encountered Parker on the roadside. Parker, awestruck, exclaimed, "Are you a witcher? Incredible. I've heard tales of your ventures into the most perilous places." His excitement was palpable as he inquired, "May I accompany you on your journeys?" After a moment's consideration, John pulled a gold coin from his pocket and tossed it towards Parker. The coin spun gracefully in the air, catching the sunlight and shimmering brilliantly before landing in the mud at Parker's feet. As Parker bent down to retrieve it, John interjected, "Picking up that gold coin disqualifies you." Parker halted, confusion written across his face. John continued walking, his voice trailing behind him. "You have a choice. Step over the gold coin and follow me, or pick it up and remain here." Without pausing, John's figure gradually vanished into the distance. Parker gazed at the gold coin, a symbol of a comfortable life, yet his expression was conflicted. Ultimately, he picked up the coin, choosing the security of reality over the uncertainty of adventure. Wandering through unfamiliar terrain, John began to regret his lack of direction. "I should have asked for directions before leaving," he mused, sighing as he continued on his way. After 3 days of travel, he finally arrived at a town. His first order of business was to find a hotel and take a refreshing shower. With 9 gold coins in his pocket, he felt relatively affluent. As he stepped outside, he noticed a procession of knights. The townsfolk respectfully bowed their heads as the knights passed. The lead knight announced, "By the king's decree, demon hunters are summoned to Consang County." Could this be a call to arms for him? John pondered, overhearing conversations in the hotel. The townspeople were skeptical. Witchers? They're the stuff of legends. Why does the king seek these monster hunters? I've heard about a fearsome banshee in Kongsang Tower, claiming many lives. Kongsang? Wasn't that a wizard's tower? The wizard's long gone. What threat could there be? Listening in, John realized that witchers were now being hunted. No wonder Mullen was so alarmed upon seeing him. So I'm now considered an enemy of wizards? He thought, finding the situation ironic. As a distinguished figure in the wizarding world, this shift in status was indeed peculiar. Inspecting his sword, he noticed the first rune glowing. 9 more remained. The banshee in Kongsang was likely his next challenge. After sheathing his sword, he watched the knights depart. John then purchased a map from the innkeeper and headed to a jewelry store to sell a gem. The shopkeeper attempted to haggle, unaware of John's adeptness in spiritual magic. John negotiated calmly, leaving the shopkeeper sweating profusely by the end of the transaction. With a new pouch of gold coins in hand, John mused, "At least the pouch still comes in handy." He then continued, on his journey, the weight of the gold coins a reminder of the adventures and trials that lay ahead. John deftly packed his belongings into the small bag, grateful for its magical capacity. If it had failed, he would have been burdened with a cumbersome load. As he departed, he caught the gaze of an onlooker, but dismissed it without much thought. Back at the hotel, he contemplated the potatoes he had acquired, musing, "It seems even here, one can't escape the ubiquity of potatoes." Despite his dreamlike state, the potatoes offered no taste, leaving him to eat merely to fill his stomach. The following day, John left the hotel to explore the city, noticing 2 individuals surreptitiously trailing him. Meanwhile, a group of knights scoured the city for someone, oblivious to John's presence since he bore no sword. "Has my presence been leaked?" John wondered, eyeing the knights with suspicion. Preferring to avoid entanglements with the local kingdom, he sought to keep things simple. Upon returning to the hotel and realizing his followers persisted, John made a swift escape through a second-floor window. The knights, returning later, interrogated the 2 followers with arrogance. "You claim there's a witcher here?" A meek man confirmed, believing John to be a witcher due to the sword he supposedly carried. The knights, far from the noble guardians of lore, proceeded to search the hotel. Their failure to find John resulted in a violent outburst, culminating in the execution of the informant. John, already far from the city, continued his journey, undeterred by the king's summons. Consulting his map and wand for direction, he contemplated acquiring a horse to hasten his travel. Fortune smiled upon him when he encountered a caravan willing to take him in exchange for gold. As night fell and the caravan halted, a businessman among them warned John of Kongsang County's ill repute, advising a detour around a cursed wizard's tower. Despite the businessman's ominous advice, the caravan was suddenly attacked by what seemed to be ghouls. In the ensuing chaos, John assessed the situation and realized these were not ghouls, but something else entirely. Addressing the terrified businessman Yoshi, John offered a choice between hearing good or bad news. Yoshi, barely coherent in his fear, opted for the good news. John calmly explained that ghouls were not known for eating humans and were generally not aggressive. This revelation surprised Yoshi, who then braced himself for the bad news. "The bad news," John continued, "is that these aren't ghouls. They're trolls." The caravan erupted into panic as the reality of their predicament dawned on them. Yoshi was on the brink of panic, his fear palpable as he witnessed the gruesome scene unfold before him. Another victim was mercilessly thrown to the ground, their fate sealed. Amidst the chaos, John, with a sly grin, offered a glimmer of hope. "There's good news. I can handle this situation, but it comes with a price. I'll pay whatever it takes. Just get rid of these monsters for me," Yoshi pleaded, desperation coloring his voice as he watched yet another person meet a violent end. "Forget the money. In exchange, you'll send me to Kongsang County," John proposed, his voice calm as he slowly unsheathed his sword, the metal glinting ominously. "Deal," Yoshi agreed, almost snarling in his urgency. With a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes, John's figure sprang into action, swift and lethal as a cheetah. Just as a giant ogre was about to claim another victim, John's sword pierced through its neck with precision. Leveraging his strength, he twisted the blade, decapitating the beast with a clean stroke. The sword absorbed the creature's essence, causing the second rune engraved on it to glow faintly. John's eyes sparkled with a hint of excitement. These little monsters were proving to be quite beneficial. He flicked the blood from his blade and, with a practiced motion, cast a spell to ensnare another man-eating monster from above. Unlike before, this creature didn't release the bloody light upon death, indicating that it had to be slain by the sword to yield its power. Surveying the battlefield, John manipulated another giant ogre to come closer, only to meet the same fate as its brethren. With each monster he dispatched, his sword absorbed more of their life essence. He moved through the flames, a grim reaper in the flesh, systematically eliminating the ogre monsters. Out of 15, all but one, which had fallen to its death, were slain by his hand. The second rune on his sword shone brighter, though it still paled in comparison to the first. Cleaning his sword one final time, John approached the caravan. The blood that stained his body, combined with the darkness of the night, painted him as a devil emerging from the depths of hell. Yoshi's face contorted in horror as he suddenly recalled his hasty promise to send John to the dreaded Kangsang County. The realization struck him hard, and he lamented, "Can I take back my word?" John, with a gentle pat on Yoshi's shoulder and a smile that was anything but comforting, replied, "Unless you wish to meet your end." The air hung heavy with the unspoken threat, sealing Yoshi's fate as he realized there was no turning back from the deal he had made. Chapter 390, Encounter with Kangsang. On the cliff, a precarious path wound its way, threatening to send any incautious convoy plummeting into the abyss below. Kangsang is the fortress of the kingdom, known as the City of Black Iron, Yoshi explained, his chubby face tense with fear as he deliberately avoided looking at the treacherous road. Despite the path being reasonably wide, the risk of falling seemed ever present. He continued, addressing John, who was seated comfortably in the carriage. That place was originally a military station, but it fell into the hands of wizards 150 years ago. After their mysterious disappearance, the place turned peculiar. Peculiar? John inquired, intrigued. The wizard tower was constructed there. For reasons unknown, once it was completed, the people vanished, Yoshi explained, his expression grim. Since then, Kangsang has been enveloped in a perpetual haze, earning it a reputation as an ominous place. Yoshi was reluctant to venture there, but the tales of John's calm demeanor, even in the face of ogre battles, convinced him that honesty was the best policy. As the convoy ascended the mountain, a city resembling a colossal iron barrel came into view. Dominating the city's center was a towering black tower. Kangsang was shrouded in haze, and at the city gates stood two guards, tall and thin, their expressions a mix of exhaustion and fear. The sight of the approaching caravan seemed to shock them, as if they had seen a ghost. "Yadani, must we enter?" Yoshi pleaded. Upon reaching his destination, John allowed Yoshi to leave. Relieved, Yoshi quickly directed the team to turn around, preferring the perilous cliff path to spending another moment in Kangsang. John, remembering something, retrieved an item from his pocket and tossed it to Yoshi, who was managing the convoy. "Yusi," he called out. Yoshi, caught off guard, instinctively caught the bag thrown his way. As a businessman, he could gauge the amount of money it contained just by its weight. He looked at John in astonishment as John waved goodbye with a smile, saying, "Consider this a business transaction. I wish you a safe journey." Stunned, Yoshi watched as John walked into the mist-enshrouded city. Kangsang truly lived up to its moniker as the City of Black Iron. Upon entering, the scent of rust from damp metal was unmistakable. The cobblestone streets were sparsely populated, and although many shops lined the way, John noted that most bore the blacksmith's sign, yet remained closed, a testament to the city's palpable gloom. Suddenly, the sound of galloping horseshoes broke the silence. A young boy on horseback dashed through the streets, shouting, "Close your doors and windows, the banshee has awakened." The few pedestrians previously moving at a leisurely pace now scrambled in panic. Before John could grasp the situation, a piercing scream filled the air, overwhelming those who couldn't find shelter in time. They collapsed, writhing in agony from the unbearable sound, which lasted for an excruciating 10 seconds. As the echo of the scream faded, John, who had been momentarily stunned, managed to regain his composure with the support of a nearby wall. The boy on horseback returned, dismounting with ease to assist an unconscious passerby. "Are you all right?" he asked, surprised to see John still standing. "What was that sound?" John inquired, puzzled. "You're not from around here. That was the banshee's cry. Whenever she awakens, she unleashes that sound," the boy explained with a worried tone. "It has repelled crusading armies more than once. Even the knights are powerless against her. My name is Libby, the time-teller of this place," he introduced himself, shaking John's hand. John, still preoccupied with thoughts of the banshee's cry, which reminded him of Voldemort's soul-chilling voice, responded, "Yadani." Libby, leading the horse, helped the affected passers-by to safety. John learned that such incidents occurred almost monthly. "How do you know when the banshee awakens?" John asked, curious about the mechanisms of this mysterious city and its eerie inhabitant. Horse and galloped towards the tavern, shouting, "The bell! The bell in the central tower has turned blue." John, who had just finished casting the cleaning spell, looked out the window and saw the blue glow emanating from the tower. He understood that the banshee had awakened, as foretold by the local legend. The central tower, a place shrouded in mystery and fear, was now signaling a danger that had not been seen for years. The tavern, run by Heiberg, a former blacksmith turned innkeeper, was the only place in Conson where travelers could find shelter. The town of Conson, under the shadow of the banshee's curse, had seen better days. Heiberg, with his bronze skin and muscular build, had adapted to his new role, though reluctantly. The presence of the banshee had driven away most of the visitors, leaving the tavern's business struggling. Our lord, Viscount Blackiron, sought help from the kingdom, but never returned. "I believe he has abandoned us," Heiberg lamented, pouring John another glass of wine. The foam-topped drink left a ring of bubbles on John's lips as he listened intently. The mention of forbidden things piqued his curiosity. Heiberg was about to divulge more when he noticed Libby, his young helper, eyeing John's wineglass with envy. Scolding Libby for nearly neglecting his duties, Heiberg sent him away, but not without stuffing a piece of cereal bread into the boy's pocket, a small act of kindness that didn't go unnoticed by John. After Libby left, John, eager to learn more, placed 2 silver coins on the table. "Tell me, what did Viscount Blackiron do?" he asked. Heiberg, now more willing to share, recounted the tale of Viscount Blackiron's folly. The Viscount, enamored with a witch, had attempted to prove his love by breaking into the central tower, a deed that led to the witch's disappearance and the unleashing of the banshee. Heiberg's disdain for the Viscount's actions was evident as he spoke of the common knowledge that witches and goblins were not to be trusted. John, intrigued but not deterred by the tale, assured Heiberg that he was not in Conson to hunt the banshee. The conversation ended there, and John retired to his room, one of the few in the tavern that could barely be called habitable. With a snap of his fingers, he cast a spell that cleaned the room, making it suitable for rest. As magic flowed from John's fingertips, the central tower responded. The bell, now glowing blue, signaled the awakening of the banshee. Libby, having witnessed the change, rushed back to the tavern, his mouth full of bread, to warn everyone. The town of Conson, with its legends and mysteries, was now at the heart of an unfolding adventure. John, with his magical abilities and curiosity, found himself drawn into the story of the banshee, the Viscount, and the witch. As the blue light bathed the central tower, the knight in Conson was about to reveal secrets long hidden in the shadows. Riding as if on a deaf horse, Libby galloped towards the city, her heart pounding with urgency. Suddenly a piercing scream, one that seemed to claw at the very eardrums, echoed through the air once more. Unbeknownst to Libby, the door of the central tower creaked open slowly, as if beckoning someone to enter. Yet, eerily, no one emerged from within. Moments later, the door shut on its own, shrouded in silence. Outside the realm of the dream test, Jovanovich's expression grew even more grave. "It appears we're dealing with a banshee, a trial that ranks just below that of the flying lion in terms of danger," he remarked, his voice laced with concern. Alexei glanced up at Andrei, seeking insight from someone who had narrowly survived this very trial. Andrei, usually a man of reckless bravado, wore a somber expression. "The banshee is not to be underestimated. Her voice alone possesses the power to kill. I barely managed to defeat her by sheer luck, he confessed, his tone heavy with the weight of his past ordeal. The group of seasoned wizards, referred to affectionately as the uncles, peered anxiously into the spring water, which served as their window to the ongoing trial. They knew all too well that the challenge ahead was not limited to merely confronting the banshee. The true cost of defeating such a creature was daunting. Her lethal scream had the potential to claim the lives of half the city's population in its deadly embrace. As concern etched deeper into their faces, one question loomed large in their minds. What will Yadani do? The gravity of the situation was palpable. The banshee's haunting presence and her deadly voice posed a threat of unimaginable proportions. The trial was not merely a test of strength or courage, but a battle for survival against an adversary whose very essence could spell doom for countless innocents. The uncles could only hope that Yadani possessed the wisdom and the power to navigate this perilous trial, for the price of failure was too great to contemplate. Chapter 391, The Encounter with the Banshee. Libby burst into the tavern, his heart racing with panic. The once orderly establishment was now in disarray, with Heiberger's towering figure crouched beneath the counter. Shattered wine bottles littered the floor, their contents spilling out and mixing with the air, filling the room with a potent aroma of alcohol that made one's head spin upon entry. "Heiberg, are you all right?" Libby called out, concern lacing his voice. "Quiet, Libby," Heiberg snapped, frustration evident as he recounted his collision with the liquor cabinet. "Curse that banshee." He lamented the loss of the drinks, which amounted to more than a dozen silver coins, a significant loss due to his failure to secure the door in time. Ignoring Heiberg's frustration, Libby grabbed a broom to help clean up, only to be shooed away. "Go check on the traveler. Make sure he hasn't fainted," Heiberg instructed, worried that the noise might have disturbed their guest, despite the tavern's soundproofing. Taking Heiberg's words to heart, Libby hurried upstairs and anxiously opened the door to the traveler's room. "Yadani, are you all right?" he asked, stepping inside. To his surprise, the room was spotless, a stark contrast to the chaos below. "Did you do this?" he asked, marveling at the cleanliness, yet not sensing any magic at work. Relieved to find John unharmed, Libby shared his thoughts on the banshee. "They usually don't stir at night," he said, puzzled by the day's events. But today was an exception. John, not dwelling on the banshee's behavior, realized he needed to check the color-changing clock. He then inquired about Libby's accommodations. "Where do you stay at night?" With the streets deserted, likely due to fear of the banshee, Libby admitted to sleeping in the tavern's stables for a mere copper coin a night. Seizing the opportunity, John offered Libby a chance to earn some extra money, presenting 2 gold coins with a slight smile. The sight of the gold made Libby's eyes widen, and despite his initial hesitation, he was eventually persuaded by John's offer, agreeing to guide him to the central tower the following day. Early the next morning, Libby was at John's door, eager to start their journey. Despite having only 2 hours of sleep, John was full of energy. They left the tavern, with Libby inviting John to ride on his deaf horse, explaining that its inability to hear protected it from the banshee's cries. This unique trait had helped Libby secure his role as a time teller. As they rode towards the central tower, they passed by a few pedestrians, a reminder that life goes on, even under the threat of the banshee. Many were confined to their hill, their dreams of the outside world remaining just that, dreams. Upon reaching the central tower, John was struck by its construction of pure black hard stones, making it the tallest and most imposing structure in Kangsang. Attempts to demolish it had all failed, its stones impervious to even the mightiest hammers. Over time, the tower, believed to have been built by a wizard, was accepted by the townsfolk. John's attention was drawn to the color-changing clock at the base of the tower, a device that warned of the banshee's cries, allowing Libby to alert the townspeople. The clock, currently brass in color, had not yet signaled any danger. Circling the tower, John pondered its purpose. Could this tower serve as some kind of amplifier? He mused, noticing the magical circles that seemed to stitch the black stones together. A magic tower, he whispered, convinced that such a grand structure must possess a significant function, as wizards seldom indulged in mere architectural vanity. To the untrained eye, the structure appeared as nothing more than an ordinary black tower. However, John could discern its true nature, a magic tower, intricately woven with a network of magical circles. The clock, serving as a sentinel, functioned akin to a looking glass or a demon mirror, its purpose to detect unseen threats. As John scrutinized it, Libby's voice, laced "Why?" the terror, broke the silence. "The banshee is awake," he exclaimed. The clock's face gradually shifted to a haunting shade of blue, signaling imminent danger. Libby urged John to flee, but John, steadfast and calm, instructed him to go ahead without him. Drawing his saber, John allowed the tip to gently graze the ground, sending an invisible ripple of energy outward. This was the super sense spell in action. With his eyes closed, John's awareness expanded, painting a vivid picture of his surroundings in his mind's eye. Despite his initial hesitation, Libby ultimately decided to alert everyone to seek refuge. Soon after, a bone-chilling scream pierced the air, a sound so dreadful it could induce comas or even death within mere seconds. John struck the ground once more, amplifying the spell's reach. A deluge of information flooded his senses, overwhelming yet enlightening. Alexei, observing from a distance, marveled at John's resilience. "Why isn't he affected by the cry?" he pondered aloud. It was a known fact that John had been vulnerable to such attacks the day before, yet now he remained unaffected. Upon closer inspection, Alexei noticed the metallic glint of earplugs in John's ears and couldn't resist a boastful comment on the clever adaptation. Andrei, puzzled by the sight, wondered about the origin of the earplugs. Little did he know, they were a product of John's alchemical prowess, a testament to his ability to conjure solutions on the spot. With the earplugs in place, John was deaf to the world, yet paradoxically, this heightened his other senses, especially after invoking the supersense charm. The banshee's wail, now a mere ripple in the vast ocean of sound, was traced back to its source on the east side of Kangsang. As the dreadful wailing ceased, John reopened his eyes to find Libby returning, a sign of lingering concern. Noticing the horse's unaffected demeanor, John's interest was piqued. "Libby, are you selling this horse?" he inquired, his tone earnest. Libby, taken aback by the unexpected question and momentarily doubting his own hearing, saw sincerity in John's expression and realized the inquiry was genuine. The proposition of selling his deaf horse for 5 gold coins, a sum far exceeding its original cost, tempted Libby, yet his sense of duty prevailed. "Sorry, Yadani, I can't part with it. It's crucial for keeping time and ensuring everyone's safety," he declined, albeit with a heavy heart. Acknowledging Libby's resolve, John shifted his request. "Then, may I borrow it for an hour?" he proposed, demonstrating respect for Libby's decision. Considering the banshee's recent awakening and the unlikely chance of another occurrence soon, Libby consented, setting a 1-hour limit. Grateful, John offered a gold coin as a deposit before mounting the horse and galloping toward the east of Kangsang, leaving Libby to anxiously monitor the clock, hoping it would remain unchanged. The eastern region of Kangsang, once under the stewardship of Viscount Blackiron, now lay desolate, a stark contrast to its former glory. With the Viscount gone, only barrenness remained, a testament to the banshee's deadly presence. John, guided by his enhanced senses and the steadfast horse beneath him, navigated the desolation with purpose. The thought of taking this horse on future journeys crossed his mind, appreciating its invaluable companionship in such dire circumstances. Upon reaching a lifeless garden, John's spell alerted him to a presence. Amidst the decay sat a girl in a white dress, her eyes closed in serene oblivion. The crunch of dead leaves under the horse's hooves stirred her from her slumber, revealing a face that swiftly morphed from innocence to horror. John's face was set in a determined grimace as he confronted the banshee. Its mouth, brimming with sharp teeth, issued a warning growl. Despite its frail appearance, the creature possessed the strength to crush stones in a single leap. Reacting swiftly, John pulled on the reins, causing his horse, which was deaf to the banshee's supernatural cries, to ear up on its hind legs. With a powerful kick, the horse sent the banshee reeling. A flash of determination sparked in John's eyes. Gripping his sword firmly in his right hand and steering his horse with the left, he charged towards the banshee. The horse, unimpeded by the creature's wails, accelerated. Just as the banshee opened its mouth to unleash another cry, John's sword sliced through the air. The blade, imbued with a silver light and the blessing of a knight, silenced the banshee's voice instantly. It took 3 seconds before blood began to gush from the creature's severed neck, spewing forth like a fountain and quickly tainting the surrounding vegetation with a dark, corrupt hue. The presence of this banshee here seems far from coincidental, John mused, his gaze sharp as he observed the creature's leg, which was shackled by an iron ring. A chain extended from the ring to a large statue situated in the garden. The statue depicted a scholar, one hand clutching a book while the other grasped a staff. A wizard? John pondered, his curiosity piqued by the statue of a wizard within the Viscount's estate. This discovery led John to suspect that there were hidden machinations at play. The connection between the banshee and the statue suggested a deeper, possibly sinister, link to the magical world. With a keen sense of awareness, John realized that unraveling this mystery would require not only his skill as a swordsman, but also his intellect and knowledge of the arcane. Chapter 392, Into the Black Tower. A bloody light emanated from the banshee and was absorbed by John's sword, illuminating the second rune. This development left Andre, who had been observing the scene, in a state of bewildered skepticism. "That's it? It's over?" he asked, clearly confused. He wasn't alone in his doubts. The other mentors shared his sentiment, questioning if their nephew had some sort of secret advantage. After a moment of contemplation, Alexei offered an explanation. John's approach was decisive, and he was incredibly fortunate. Andre gestured for him to elaborate. Alexei analyzed the situation further. The banshee's most lethal weapon is its cry, capable of killing instantly. John neutralized this threat with earplugs, effectively halving the banshee's power. The mentors nodded in agreement, recognizing the truth in Alexei's words. He continued, "Additionally, John's speed played a crucial role. Mounted on his horse, he was swift. After repelling the banshee's initial attack, he quickly closed in and eliminated her before she could retaliate." Alexei concluded with a reflective tone. "Had I been in his place, I might have hesitated due to the banshee's deceptive appearance." Indeed, the banshee's illusion of innocence had almost cost Andre his life during their encounter. In contrast, John's ability to see through the deception and act decisively was a testament to his suitability for the Witcher's path. However, the mentors humorously noted that John's lack of romantic interests might be a side effect of his pragmatic nature. Unperturbed, John examined his sword, noticing a trace of sticky blood. "There's poison on it," he remarked, unfazed due to his dragon skin's resistance to toxins. As he prepared to dismount for a closer inspection, he noticed the blood at the banshee's severed neck moving like worms, attempting to reconnect the head to the body. While others might have been horrified, John acted swiftly, attempting to sever the reanimating blood. However, his efforts were in vain, as the blood seemed impervious to his blade. As the banshee's head began to reanimate, emitting a dreadful scream, John quickly silenced it by driving his sword through her open mouth, pinning her head to the ground. Puzzled by the banshee's persistence, John speculated, was she turned into a reanimated corpse? The worm-like blood confirmed his suspicion of necromantic manipulation. Ensuring the banshee could not reassemble, John set her remains ablaze with a spell, watching as both the body and head were consumed by fire. Following the chains that had bound the banshee, John discovered a hidden passage beneath a statue of a wizard. The passage, revealed by breaking a stone slab, was too narrow for his horse, which he left behind with no immediate threats present. With torches lighting the way, John ventured deeper into the passage, curiosity driving him forward despite the uncertainty of what lay ahead. He kept his earplugs in, wary of any unseen dangers that might lurk in the shadows of the mysterious tunnel. John's suspicion grew as he navigated the long, narrow passage, his sword striking the wall to activate the super sense spell. The spell's feedback confirmed his suspicion. The passage stretched on without an end in sight. The faint sparks from dragging chains ahead suggested someone or something was deliberately leading him further into the darkness. After a seemingly endless walk, John stumbled upon an intriguing object embedded in the ground. "This must be a magic wand," he mused, extracting it with interest. Unlike the slender wands he was accustomed to, This one was unusually large, reminiscent of the staffs wielded by wizards in ancient tales. A yew wand, but not just any wand. A staff, he corrected himself, realizing its significant size difference. It was a relic from a time when wizards openly carried such items, before the need for secrecy from muggles led to their decline in use. With the hefty wand in his left hand and his sword in his right, John continued his journey. The path grew, increasingly dark, the torches vanished, but his night vision spared him from the total darkness. The sudden rise of the chain sparks indicated stairs ahead, and sure enough, John found himself facing an upward staircase. The material felt familiar under his touch, black stone, similar to that of the central tower. Climbing the stairs, John speculated about the tower's history and its connection to a witch who, according to legend, was the only person to have entered the wizard tower built 150 years ago. Could the witch have turned the banshee into a corpse? And for what purpose? He pondered, his curiosity piqued. At the top of the stairs, John entered an open area illuminated by a blue flame. A gargoyle statue stood at the end of the chain, a clear indication that the banshee was imprisoned by the inhabitants of the wizard's tower. This gargoyle bears a striking resemblance to the one in the principal's office, John noted, piecing together the tower's mysteries. As he ascended the spiral staircase, John reflected on the tower's significance and the witch's possible motives for approaching the Black Iron Viscount. Was the wizard tower her ultimate goal all along? He wondered, considering the implications for the Viscount, who seemed to be an unwitting participant in a larger scheme. The tower's construction of hard black stone added to its imposing presence as John climbed higher, longing for the convenience of his shooting star shoes, now rendered ordinary in this world. Reaching the 5th floor, he discovered a vast library filled with towering bookshelves that stretched towards the ceiling, a testament to the tower's wealth of knowledge and secrets waiting to be uncovered. John stepped into a vast, dimly lit chamber, its ceiling lost in shadows far above. The room was filled with tables that could double as desks for a classroom, and in the center lay a dry pool with a cauldron resting on a nearby table. The walls and floors were adorned with gems that sparkled faintly in the dim light. With a casual flick of his staff, John tapped the ground, initiating a magical transformation. Lines etched into the floor began to glow, connecting the gemstones in a dazzling display of light. As the gemstones illuminated, the entire space was bathed in a soft, ethereal glow. Seated at one of the tables was a figure draped in a voluminous wizard's robe, its head obscured by a hood. John could tell the figure was alive. He noticed the subtle movement of its fingers. Suddenly, a voice broke the silence, deep and unmistakably male. "You, wizard," it called out as the figure rose slowly to its feet. John watched intently as the figure turned to face him, revealing a mask that covered its entire face beneath the hood. The mask was horrifying, with blood seeping from its eye sockets, and the figure's body seemed unnaturally soft, as if devoid of bones. Maintaining his composure, John raised his hand, ready to cast a spell designed to ensnare and immobilize. Such a spell should have sent the figure hurtling through the air, but this time, the outcome was startlingly different. Only the figure's robes flew off, revealing a bloodied, humanoid form standing starkly exposed. Without warning, the figure's body exploded in a violent burst, transforming into a curtain of blood that surged towards John, threatening to engulf him completely. The chamber, once filled with the potential for magical learning and discovery, had turned into a scene of horror and mystery. John found himself facing an adversary unlike any he had encountered before, one that challenged his understanding of magic and his own abilities. The encounter was not just a test of strength, but a confrontation with the unknown depths of dark magic. Chapter 393, I Vaporized a Vampire. The gems cast a light that clearly outlined the figure before me, making the man appear more like a specter than flesh and blood. Blood seemed to ooze from the eyes of his mask, and beneath his billowing robe was nothing but blood, devoid of bone or flesh. There I stood, John, facing a vampire cloaked in a wizard's robe. His eyes, a lifeless gray and white, seemed to foresee the end of our confrontation. Physical attacks are useless, I mused, recalling how my attempt to use magic to capture the creature had merely stripped it of its clothing. The vampire was like water, slipping through my fingers, impossible to grasp. Thus, I refrained from attacking. In my left hand, I held my staff, and in my right, my sword. "Who are you?" I demanded, sensing from our brief exchange that this creature possessed a certain level of intelligence. The vampire, taken aback by my patience, a trait uncharacteristic of the impulsive witchers he was accustomed to, slowly approached. "This tower was built by my ancestors," he revealed, his voice a chilling whisper. "And you, witcher, have trespassed into my domain." As he closed the distance between us, he bared his fangs menacingly. Suddenly, his body exploded into a curtain of blood, surging towards me with violent intent. "For this intrusion, you shall pay dearly." This blood curtain had the sinister ability to infiltrate every pore, capable of usurping one's very body, an abomination by any measure. However, I had foreseen this tactic. The same move would not work twice against a demon hunter like me. Planting my staff firmly on the ground, my eyes transformed, taking on vertical pupils as an ancient incantation escaped my lips. Incendio. At the command, a flame burst forth from the staff's tip, morphing into a colossal fireball that collided with the blood curtain. The sound of sizzling blood filled the air, accompanied by the vampire's screams of agony. "No, how do you know magic?" he shrieked in horror. "You're not a witcher. You're a wizard." The vampire had never imagined that a witcher would wield magic against him. In his mind, demon hunters were mere swordsmen, reliant on physical weaponry, a notion that made them easy prey for a being impervious to physical harm. Unfortunately for him, he had encountered John, a wizard who defied conventional expectations. As a wizard, I wielded my staff with precision, unleashing flames that continued to scorch the vampire until nothing remained but vapor. My uncles, who had never before witnessed a vampire, were rendered speechless by the spectacle. They knew that confronting such a creature would exact a heavy toll, likely resulting in their demise, not because they lacked strength, but because they faced an adversary unlike any other. Vampires, akin to water, were immune to physical attacks, rendering the typical arsenal of a demon hunter ineffective. But I, John, was no ordinary demon hunter. Behind the guise of a warrior lay the power of magic, the very element that spelled doom for the vampire. Underestimation was his downfall. To ensure the vampire's complete eradication, I also incinerated his robe. A single drop of blood, however, managed to escape, seeking refuge under a table before making its way towards a bookshelf. "Impossible. How can I perish like this?" the blood lamented, unwilling to accept its fate. After waiting for so long, it had found an opportunity to emerge, only to lose its body and be cornered with no escape. The body of a witcher had offered a glimmer of hope for a return to power, but my fire spell had dashed all such hopes. Unwilling to concede, the blood drop clung to its immortality, believing that survival and the eventual reopening of the wizard's tower would offer another chance. As it neared the safety of the bookshelf, a red-hot blade pierced the drop with precision, obliterating any hope of survival. The intense heat quickly evaporated the remaining blood. Withdrawing the blade, I pondered. This creature could still move with just a drop of blood left. What exactly was it? There was no record of such a being in. John's understanding of the situation suggested that what he had encountered might be akin to a curse, perhaps similar to a blood curse. As the droplet of blood evaporated, a mysterious red light emerged from the ether, striking the sword and illuminating the third rune. This unexpected development took John by surprise. He had initially dismissed the entity before him as a minor nuisance, something that could easily be dispatched with a simple fire spell, likening it to a little monster. However, the sudden activation of the third rune signified that this was no mere trivial foe, but rather a significant challenge, akin to a boss in a trial. "It's too weak," John mused, considering that even Malfoy could easily overcome it if he were here. Despite the ongoing battle, the illumination of the fifth floor remained unaffected. The glowing lines seemed to beckon John, guiding him in a specific direction. He wondered if the staff he held was influencing this guidance. Following the light, he observed the bookshelves parting to either side, revealing a path deeper into the library. Among the books that caught his eye, John noticed one about runes. He summoned the book with a gesture, intrigued by its contents. The displacement of the bookshelves revealed a formation, and the presence of ancient rune text piqued John's interest further. In the center of this newly formed space stood a table, connecting a crystal and a black stone. A hole in the table perfectly matched the staff in John's possession. Naturally, John was not one to back down from a discovery. He placed the staff into the hole, drawing his wand out to remain on guard. As the staff settled into place, the crystal erupted in a brilliant display of light. The energy from various gemstones converged on the staff's head, a gray-white rhombus-shaped stone, which then projected a mark onto the ground. This mark rapidly condensed into a silver key necklace shaped like an 8 and suspended in midair. John used his wand to retrieve the necklace, and as he did so, the surrounding light dimmed. "What is this key for?" John pondered, examining the key closely. As an alchemist, he quickly discerned that the key contained a unique unlocking magic, distinct from the standard unlocking spell. It was more akin to a protective spell, reminiscent of the Fidelius charm. John surmised that the key was a secret keeper, meant to reveal the entrance to a protected location. Such a place, guarded so meticulously, must contain something of great value. With the staff now removed, the bookshelves around John reverted to their original positions. The patterns of light on the ground confirmed his suspicion that the wizard tower served as a massive amplifier of magical energy. The full extent of its capabilities would only become clear once John had explored the entire tower. Continuing his ascent, John reached the 6th floor, which housed a garden teeming with lush vegetation. The intertwining paths transformed the area into a labyrinth. After navigating through the maze, John arrived at the 7th floor, which concealed a school. This school exuded a somber atmosphere, starkly different from Hogwarts, with its uniformity and classrooms that appeared to have been duplicated by a copying spell. The path upward was concealed above a pool filled with long-deceased eels. On the 8th floor, John found himself amidst numerous star models, simulating the vastness of the universe. The room felt as boundless as space itself. However, he was unable to locate the entrance to the 9th floor. As he paused, contemplating his next move, the sound of footsteps reached his ears. Reacting swiftly, John turned and disarmed the approaching figure, pressing the captured knife against the intruder's neck. The suddenness of his action seemed to catch the visitor off guard, causing them to stiffen, their slender and fair neck breaking out in goosebumps from the cold blade. John locked eyes with the intruder. Long golden hair, gray-blue eyes, and fair skin framed the face of the woman before him. After a momentary pause, she met his gaze defiantly. "Who are you? Why are you here? How did you get in?" she demanded, her tone laced with anger. John's expression turned icy. "This is what I want to ask you. Who are you?" This encounter marked the beginning of a confrontation filled with questions and uncertainties. The person who appeared in the Wizard Tower was of great interest to John, and he was not about to let this opportunity for exploration slip by. The woman before him struggled to find her words, the cold sensation at her neck compelling her to speak, albeit reluctantly. "I am the master here," she declared, her voice laced with a mix of defiance and resignation. "Emily. Master?" John eyed her with a mix of skepticism and curiosity. The doubt in his gaze felt like a sting to Emily's pride, prompting her to assert more firmly, "I will be, sooner or later." It was then that Emily's attention shifted to the sword on John's back and the staff in his left hand. Her expression darkened considerably. "You've pulled out the gray crystal staff?" she exclaimed, her voice a mixture of disbelief and anger. "You fool! Do you realize what you've done? Lord Black Iron Blood will be unleashed because of you," she continued, her voice rising in panic. "The entire city will face disaster." Emily's insult, calling John a stupid groundhog, did little to improve his mood. His expression darkened further. Did this woman not realize the precariousness of her own situation? Yet Emily seemed resigned to their fate, her frustration boiling over. "It's too late now. When the Bloodlord finds us, we're as good as dead. Where did you even come from, you reckless fool?" John was taken aback by Emily's outburst. Her words painted a dire picture, one where his actions had inadvertently set in motion a chain of events that could lead to catastrophe. Despite her initial hostility and the harshness of her words, it was clear that Emily was deeply concerned about the consequences of John's actions, not just for herself, but for the entire city. The gravity of the situation began to dawn on John, and he realized that understanding and addressing the threat of Lord Black Ironblood was now imperative. Chapter 394. I rescued the witch. Was I being reckless? The thought crossed John's mind as he contemplated casting a locking curse on the man with the loose tongue. However, seeing Emily's look of desperation, he decided against it and sheathed his knife. With a casual tone, he inquired, "What is this place? And who is the Black Iron Bloodlord?" Having lost all hope, Emily felt she had nothing left to hide. "This is the Black Eagle Tower, a place where mages from the Wizard Independence faction conducted their research. Unfortunately, their daring experiments led to the disappearance of all the wizards in the tower," she explained, her knowledge of the place evident. Rolling her eyes at John, she continued, "As for the Black Iron Bloodlord, he's a dangerous individual. Originally a viscount of this city, he took me hostage, forced his way into the Black Eagle Tower, and sought its treasures." She scoffed at the memory. He mistakenly believed that by controlling a wizard, he could wield magic himself. Instead, the backlash transformed him into a blood knight. "I managed to use the last of my magic to seal the place, trapping him inside. His weakness is sound. I summoned a banshee with my remaining power, used it to block his exit, and sealed the entrance with a staff," Emily recounted, a hint of pride in her voice. She then laughed at John. "It's a pity you've undone all my efforts. Now that the seal is broken, nothing can stop him." As John processed her story, he looked at Emily with a puzzled expression and asked, "Is this Bloodlord made entirely of blood?" "Yes, that's him. He's been searching for me relentlessly. Luckily, I've been hiding on the 8th floor, out of his reach," Emily replied, unaware of John's implication. John, wearing an odd expression, simply stated, "If we're talking about the same person, he's dead." "Stop joking. That's impossible," Emily began, glaring at John in disbelief. However, her skepticism quickly turned to shock as she noticed the sword on John's back and gasped, "You're a witcher?" No, even a witcher couldn't kill him." She suspected John was deceiving her, but he calmly raised his hand and a small flame danced on his palm. "I set him on fire," John said, his tone matter-of-fact. Emily was baffled. Why would an exorcist use magic? Though some exorcists were known to employ minor magical techniques, they were usually more akin to shockwaves. Eventually, she had to accept the truth, questioning her own understanding. The creature that trapped me here was defeated so easily? Recalling a recent event, she asked, "Were you the one who cast that cleansing spell yesterday?" Emily had mistaken him for a wizard and had opened the door, hoping to ally with him against the Bloodlord. To her dismay, an exorcist had arrived and effortlessly dispatched the Bloodlord, rendering her previous efforts futile. "By the way, where is the 9th floor of this tower?" John inquired, still unable to locate it. "There is no 9th floor," Emily replied, her tone final. John pondered this new information. If there was no 9th floor, then what was the purpose of his quest? Emily, having spent a considerable amount of time in the tower to evade the Bloodlord, had explored its upper levels thoroughly and could confirm its absence. The tower, originally constructed by the Wizard Independence faction, was meant to serve as a base for cultivating a wizard army. Unfortunately, their plans never came to fruition, and they vanished following the experiment's failure. Emily's extensive knowledge of the tower and its history hinted at her significant background, suggesting there was much more to her story than John initially realized. The royal wizard of her own country, Emily, found herself ensnared in a web of deceit from the outset. Initially misled by tales of magical creatures causing havoc, she was abducted by the Black Iron Viscount and taken to the Black Eagle Tower. However, her curiosity about the tower's secrets remained undimmed. Upon discovering a note on the 7th floor, she presented it to John, saying, "This contains all the information I've managed to gather about the Black Hawk Tower. Since you've dealt with the Blood Baron, I thought you might appreciate a little insight." John unfolded the note, scanning the contents Emily had meticulously compiled. A particular term immediately drew his attention. "Monument?" he inquired, looking up at Emily with a mixture of confusion and curiosity. Emily shared his perplexity. It appears that the primary focus of research at the Black Eagle Tower is on a megalithic monument. What you refer to as the ninth floor likely houses this monument's study, she explained. The disappearance of those wizards probably ties back to the megalith, John concluded, slipping the note into his pocket with a casual air. Emily's eyes widened in disbelief. What are you doing? Isn't this the reward you offered me? John responded, a playful smirk on his face. Forget the money. Consider this as settling any debts. Emily, feigning indignation, attempted to reclaim the note, but was effortlessly held back by John. Left with no other choice, she reluctantly agreed to make another copy for him. As they departed the Black Tower, Emily was acutely aware of the time she had been away. She needed to report back to the king without delay. If you're truly keen on uncovering the secrets of the ninth floor, you should head to the capital. It's likely someone there can provide the answers you seek, she suggested before parting ways. She then attempted to purchase the staff from John, clearly concealing her true intentions. The staff, a relic left by an independent wizard, held no value for John after he had removed its key. Besides, John preferred his wand to any staff. Thus, he demanded an exorbitant price, ensuring Emily would not only have to trek back to the capital, but also owe him a significant amount of gold. The Banshee and the Bloodlord had been vanquished, yet the shadow over Kangsang remained. John understood that the Black Tower's presence continued to cast a pall over the land. He contemplated its destruction, but hesitated, wary of potential consequences. Upon his return to the tavern, John was greeted by an unexpectedly vibrant atmosphere. Heiberg, the tavern keeper, was in high spirits, generously pouring wine for his patrons. The mood was a stark contrast to the gloom of the previous day. Libby, having tasted wine for the first time, approached John with tears in his eyes from the drink's potency. He excitedly shared news of the Banshee's demise, his cheeks flushed with either the alcohol's effect or the thrill of the moment. John's thoughts briefly wandered to the deaf horse he had left at the statue, but he found it contentedly munching on hay in the stable. Libby, noticing John's lack of surprise, whispered, "Was it you, Yadani?" John's smile in response only fueled Libby's curiosity, prompting him to bombard John with questions about his feat. In a surprising turn, Libby decided to gift the horse to John, a gesture that took John aback. "Without the Banshee, I won't be able to maintain my position here much longer," Libby admitted with a resigned smile. "I simply can't afford it." John offered a sympathetic pat on Libby's shoulder, but Libby wasn't disheartened. To him, losing his job was a small price to pay compared to the terror of the Banshee. He insisted on giving the horse to John, refusing any form of payment, a testament to his newfound freedom from fear. Libby stood firm, her conviction unwavering. "Even if no one else knows, I want to express my gratitude for your efforts," she said with sincerity. John, initially hesitant, finally acquiesced. "All right, I'll accept it," he conceded, watching as Libby cradled the glass of wine with a tenderness akin to holding a newborn. As night enveloped the surroundings, John sought out Heiberg, who was immersed in his tasks. Deciding to wait until the following day, John turned his attention to the horse that Libby had never named, owing to its inability to hear. "I'll call you Polo," he declared, a soft pat on the horse's head, sealing the new name. Mounting Polo, John set off towards Kangsang. Meanwhile, Libby was gathering his sparse belongings in the stables. His recent job loss left him unable to afford even the modest rent of a copper coin. Just as he was about to depart, Heiberg's voice halted him. "Where do you think you're going?" Heiberg inquired, his expression sour. Overwhelmed, Libby stuttered. I can't afford the rent." To Libby's surprise, Heiberg didn't eject him from the premises. Instead, he escorted him into the tavern and into a hotel room. "You'll live here now," Heiberg declared, feigning annoyance. "Take tomorrow off, but you're working in the tavern starting the day after." "Got it?" "But you said I was too inept to hire," Libby murmured, confusion lacing his voice. Heiberg fixed him with a stern look. "With the crowds we get, do you want to work me to death? Start tomorrow, and remember, you'll pay for anything you break." With that, Heiberg left, leaving Libby in a state of disbelief. As Libby settled on the bed, pondering his unexpected turn of fortune, he felt an odd sensation. Investigating, he discovered 5 gold coins on the bed, the proceeds from the sale of the horse. Navigating through treacherous mountain paths was a task John undertook with ease, his wizardly abilities ensuring he never lost his way. The dense forest he entered bore a striking resemblance to the forbidden forest he knew from his past. "This place feels familiar," he mused, flipping through the book Emily had sent him. "A kingdom?" he pondered, the mysteries of the forest beckoning him deeper into its embrace. Chapter 395, I Defeated the Giant Bear. Traveling in the wilderness, it's always wise to follow a stream. John set up camp beside one, feeling a twinge of nostalgia for his fully automatic luxury tent. Unfortunately, none of his magical gadgets worked in this place. With a snap of his fingers, the collected firewood ignited into a welcoming bonfire. John could endure days and nights of travel, but his horse, Polo, needed rest. Grazing quietly by a tree, Polo's deafness was both a blessing and a curse. It sometimes meant ignoring John's commands, but through spiritual magic they communicated effectively. This not only prevented Polo from being startled by unfamiliar objects, but also ensured his obedience. Resting under a tree, John crafted a makeshift bed from vines and lay there, gazing up at the stars. His mind wandered back to the Black Hawk Tower research project and the giant stone monument the group of independent wizards was studying. Clearly, it was no ordinary artifact. Dream trials, filled with so many wonders, he mused. The experiences within the dream trials vastly differed from his studies at Hogwarts, introducing him to kingdoms, witchers, wizards, black towers, vampires, and monoliths. This journey also opened up opportunities for John to explore knowledge beyond that of a witcher, such as the study of runes. He pulled out a small bag, revealing several books inscribed with runes. At Hogwarts, runes were primarily studied for translation, but these ancient symbols harbored immense power. The books in John's possession detailed runes far more extensively than those in the Hogwarts library. It wasn't that Hogwarts lacked quality, but rather, the older the runes, the more potent they were. Among his collection were also books written by goblins, which promised to enhance his understanding of runes and alchemy. As dawn broke, John extinguished the bonfire and set off northward. Unlike other witchers, John traveled in style, unburdened by financial constraints that plagued his fellow demon hunters. The stream's vicinity teemed with wildlife. A little further, and I'll reach a small town, he calculated, estimating a 4-day journey ahead. He marveled at the detailed map he had acquired, pondering the innkeeper's resources in an era devoid of modern communication. The forest's hues gradually shifted to green, signaling the end of winter. During a rest stop, John chopped down a dead tree, startling a flock of white birds. Polo, oblivious due to his deafness, continued to drink from the stream. John transformed the tree into firewood, which soon produced a smoky aroma. He skewered some fish from the stream, preferring them cooked over raw. The grilling fish released a tantalizing scent, and after consuming two, John felt his appetite rejuvenated by the journey's demands. Tossing the fish bones back into the stream, he considered it a gesture of giving back to its inhabitants. Just as he prepared to depart, a distant tremor caught his attention. Crouching down, he observed the vibrating stones. Looking up, he saw a giant bear charging through the trees, its approach marked by smoke and dust. The bear's brown fur and sheer size were intimidating, with each step causing the earth to shudder. The bear, standing over 3 meters tall, effortlessly swatted aside a tree blocking its path. Without hesitation, John mounted Polo and urged him into a swift gallop along the stream. The horse's hooves pounded the earth, with the giant bear in hot pursuit. John steered towards the forest, leveraging the horse's agility to navigate the dense terrain. The giant bear charged, tearing through the trees with such force that it overtook the car traveling in the opposite direction and arrived in front of John on the rough road. John, however, did not slow down. Instead, his speed increased. While other horses might have frozen in fear at the sight of the giant bear, Polo, John's horse, was unfazed due to his inability to hear the bear's approach, and thus he sped up, charging towards the imminent threat. As the bear raised its massive paw, poised to deliver a deadly blow, John drew his sword, which was inscribed with 3 glowing runes, from his back. The sunlight caught the blade, making it gleam as he prepared to strike. When Polo closed the distance to the bear, John released the reins, gripping the sword with both hands. He harnessed the strength from his core, charging up for a powerful swing. The The sword, moving faster than the horse, sliced through the air, leaving a clean cut on the bear's rough skin before its paw could descend. Blood sprayed from the wound, and the bear roared in pain and anger. Despite the injury, the bear's resilience was remarkable. It smashed a boulder, sending shards of rock flying towards John. Quickly, John drew his wand and cast the iron armor charm, shielding himself from the flying debris. Then, with agility, he leaped from Polo's back, sword in hand, and aimed for the bear's eyes. Sensing the danger, the bear stood on its hind legs, attempting to crush John with its powerful paws. John, however, was prepared. He pointed his wand at the bear's legs and cast the jelly legs jinx. The spell took immediate effect, causing the bear's legs to buckle and collapse. Struggling to maintain its balance with its paws, the bear raised its head, only for John's silver blade to loom larger before its eyes. With a swift motion, the sword pierced the bear's eye and drove deep into its brain. The bear's convulsions threw John into the air, but he managed to land safely, albeit spinning, as the bear struggled in its final moments. After a tense half-minute, the giant bear lay still, defeated. The surrounding area bore the marks of their battle, with more than a dozen trees shattered. "This giant bear was truly tenacious," John remarked as he approached the fallen beast. He forcefully pulled the silver sword from the bear's head, noticing that a fourth rune had lit up on the blade. Another trial boss? He wondered aloud, realizing that his trials seemed to be progressing even without his intention. Looking at the giant bear, John considered the possibility of selling its hide for some money. With the next town less than a day's journey away, he decided to skin the bear before continuing on his way. At the castle by the spring, Alexei reflected on John's encounter with the giant bear. "He has finally faced a standard test," he said, noting that many from the Jovanovich clan, including Seryosha, had faced similar trials. Unlike others who preferred cunning tactics, John's direct approach was reminiscent of the fearless Boris. Smart judgment, recognizing the giant bear's weakness in its hind legs, Seryosha praised. "I'm curious to see how far Yadani can go," Andrei added, referring to John by his trial name. The dream trial was designed to end after 3 challenges, but it would continue if the participant did not choose to conclude it. The Jovanovich clan was eager to see how far John would progress and which bloodline he would awaken. With expectations high, John arrived in the town of Balvi. Upon entering Balvi, John sought accommodation and replenishment after several days of travel. He stabled Polo and headed to the local tavern, knowing that taverns were excellent places for gathering information, much like in Hogsmeade. Observing the Tuna Tavern, which stood out among the other buildings for its prosperity, John mused on the simplicity of wizards. He still couldn't fathom why the owner chose such a name for the establishment. The Pig's Head Tavern was notorious for its lack of cleanliness. As John pushed the door open, the creaking hinges were drowned out by the lively commotion inside. Dressed in a set of black robes he had purchased before leaving Kongsang, John's attire immediately drew attention. The patrons' gazes shifted from his unusual outfit to the silver sword, partially exposed at his side. A woman, in particular, paused mid-sip from her wineglass, her eyes moving from the sword to John's face. John sensed the scrutiny, but remained indifferent. His recent life as a swordsman had imbued him with a certain ruggedness. Striding into the tavern, he approached the proprietor. "I'd like some hot food, nothing cold," he requested, still clutching the bear skin he had peeled from a giant bear. "Do you know where I can sell this?" he inquired, laying the bear skin on the counter. The tavern owner's eyes widened in surprise. "My God, did you slay that forest demon?" he exclaimed. "It was a chance encounter," John replied nonchalantly, as the tavern fell into a hushed silence. "You needn't sell it. If it's money you're after, you could claim a bounty instead," a sultry voice suggested, reminiscent of a slightly inebriated red wine. John turned to see the woman who had been observing him. She smiled, holding her wineglass aloft. "If you're unfamiliar with the process, I could guide you," she offered. The woman raised her glass in a toast. "Furui, you must be the person of legend." "Black Witcher Yadani," John introduced himself, acknowledging her with a nod. The exchange between John and the woman, now known as Yadani, piqued the interest of the tavern's patrons. The atmosphere, previously charged with curiosity and suspicion, shifted subtly as they realized they were in the presence of individuals from the tales that had woven through their community. John's encounter at the Pig's Head Tavern was not just a quest for sustenance and trade, but the beginning of an unexpected alliance. Chapter 396, A Conversation with a Wizard. As John's exploits against magical creatures became known, his reputation began to precede him. Fury, with a keen interest, eyed his dark hair as if it were a testament to his adventures. "The Black Witcher?" she mused, a hint of admiration in her voice. John was momentarily taken aback, not expecting his deeds to have earned him such a moniker. "It all started with a village where you vanquished a werewolf," Fury recounted. Her curiosity piqued. "Rumor has it you single-handedly defeated 15 ogres." Turning to the tavern keeper, Fury called for a round of drinks. "A beer for our friend here," she declared. The tavern keeper, however, was less than welcoming. "We don't serve drinks to monsters," he retorted, his disdain for John evident. "Trust me," Fury countered firmly, locking eyes with the tavern keeper. "You'd want to reconsider." Despite his reluctance, the tavern keeper complied, though his displeasure was clear. John wasn't surprised by the tavern keeper's reaction. In his experience, those with power beyond the ordinary were often revered as deities or reviled as monsters. It seemed the latter was true for witchers in these parts. Once seated, Fury, a vision with her blonde hair, leaned in closer, her fingers tracing the outline of the bear hide John wore. "How did you manage to kill it?" she asked, genuine curiosity in her voice. "With a sword. Aim for the eyes. They're the weak spot," John explained, just as the tavern keeper begrudgingly served him a beer. John had actually preferred water, but considering the setting, he opted for the beer instead. "You're quite young for a witcher. Most I've met are much older, and your hair." Fury mused, her gaze lingering on John's face. His youthful appearance set him apart from the typically weathered demon hunters. Perhaps feeling the pressure from Fury, the tavern keeper soon delivered the meal John had ordered earlier. The venison in red wine sauce was aromatic and inviting. "Had it not been for that sword, I wouldn't have pegged you for a witcher," Fury remarked, her eyes twinkling with intrigue as she sampled the venison. John, changing the subject, inquired, "You mentioned a bounty. Where can I claim it?" He subtly pushed the plate towards Fury, a slight frown on his face, humorously indicating his concern for cleanliness. Fury couldn't help but laugh at John's gesture. A witcher concerned with cleanliness? That's a first. The bounty for the forest demon is with the mayor. I can assist you if you wish to claim it. Before John could respond, a young girl with braided hair approached, her eyes wide with excitement. "You're the one who killed the demon in the forest?" she asked, her gaze fixed on the bear hide. "I can show you where to collect your reward." John, momentarily caught off guard, exchanged glances with Fury before deciding to leave. "Perhaps you should consider her offer," Fury suggested, her tone apologetic as she addressed the others in the tavern. Shrugging, John collected the bear hide and made his way outside, followed by the enthusiastic girl. "My name is Marika," she introduced herself. "Yadani, pleasure to meet you," John replied, adopting a suit on him. He headed to the stables to fetch his horse Polo and draped the bear hide over the animal. As they walked through the bustling city streets, Marika bombarded John with questions about his exploits. "Have you fought werewolves, banshees, or other monsters?" Her curiosity was typical of children her age, eager to hear tales of adventure. Eventually, Marika led John to the base of a round tower. After knocking on the door and leaving Marika outside with Polo, John sensed something amiss. "Magic?" he murmured, detecting magical energy emanating from the door. Without hesitation, John stepped through the door, his body passing through as if it were no barrier at all, reminiscent of crossing through platform 9 3/4. "A wizard," he concluded, realizing this was no ordinary meeting. Inside, John found himself in a garden that seemed out of place, filled with illusions that were not meant for the eyes of children. It was clear he had been led here for a reason, and whoever had orchestrated this meeting had plans for him. Under the age of 16, John maintained an expressionless face, his eyes morphing into vertical pupils. His gaze sharpened as he fixed it on the approaching wizard, who seemed to embody the traditional image of a wizard. Tall and slender, he was clad in a floor-length robe, clutching a long staff topped with a crystal ball. His sparse hair and grand beard framed an aquiline nose. The wizard, momentarily caught in John's intense stare, waved his hands in greeting. "Hello, Witcher. My name is Stregobor," he introduced himself. "You may refer to me as Master Stregobor." He assured John of his peaceful intentions. Yet John, through his spiritual magic, sensed a malevolent aura and a palpable disdain emanating from him. Casting a casual glance around, John remarked, "Don't tell me you're a mayor who dabbles in magic." Stregobor, unfazed, replied with a smile, "Of course not. To be precise, I had Marika lure you here. She occasionally assists me." With a gesture inviting John to join him, Stregobor led the way into the secluded garden. "I intend to purchase your bear skin," he mentioned as they strolled along the garden path. "People like you are rare in these parts," Stregobor commented. John responded tersely, "People like you are uncommon as well." Stregobor momentarily frowned, but quickly regained his composure. "But if I recall correctly, witchers are devoid of emotions," he remarked, raising an eyebrow. John remained silent, finding the assertion absurd. If anyone claimed he lacked emotions, John thought, they'd have to contend with Dad Watson's opinion on the matter. "I am grateful that fate has brought you to me," Stregobor continued, seemingly oblivious to John's skepticism. "Is it truly fate, or are you unaware of your own motives?" John wondered, growing impatient with the wizard's ramblings. "Out with it. What do you want?" he demanded, skeptical of the wizard's intentions in seeking out a witcher. Stregobor nodded, acknowledging John's astuteness. "Indeed, Witcher, I have a request for you," he said. "What monster?" John inquired, assuming the task involved his usual line of work, monster hunting. However, Stregobor's request took an unexpected turn. "It's a man named Fry," he revealed. As they reached a flower bed within the garden, Stregobor posed a question. "Have you ever heard of the Black Sun Curse?" Witchers, known for slaying monsters, also dealt with other threats. John fixed his gaze on Stregobor, stating bluntly, "Wizards." Stregobor visibly tensed at the mention, taking a deep breath to calm himself before continuing. "Lilith, the evil goddess of the night, prophesied that 60 girls wearing golden crowns would usher in her arrival with rivers of blood. I've studied girls born under the dark sun and discovered a horrifying mutation within them. I attempted to cure them, confining them to a tower for their safety," Stregobor claimed, his tone imbued with a sense of righteousness, as if he were a savior of humanity. Yet his words were largely untruthful. "Inner mutation?" John pondered, intrigued by the notion of a blood curse causing widespread mutation, a phenomenon unheard of in the wizarding world. Stregobor, with a hint of madness lurking beneath his calm demeanor, justified his actions. "Eliminating these women is a necessary evil," he argued, looking expectantly at John as if discussing the salvation of the world rather than the taking of a life. John, however, remained composed, his voice steady as he asked, "So you want me to kill her? Just one life?" In John's era, the value of a human life, whether belonging to a wizard or a muggle, was paramount, and taking one could condemn a man to a lifetime behind bars. Despite Stregobor's resemblance to the venerable Dumbledore, his actions and attitude were reprehensible by comparison, reflecting poorly on his character. Approaching Stregobor, John spoke with deliberate emphasis, highlighting the gravity of the request and the moral implications it carried. "Do you realize that in my world, your actions would land you in Azkaban?" John's tone was icy, hinting at the gravity of the situation. "Azkaban?" Stregobor's expression turned to one of confusion, yet it was clear he understood John's reluctance to assist. Desperate to sway John's opinion, he pressed on. "Furui exhibits signs of mutation. Her stepmother confided in me about her torturing a canary and strangling 2 puppies. To protect her family, I had people shadow her, only to discover her lifeless body in the woods, identifiable by a brooch she wore." He paused, gauging John's reaction before continuing. "Despite our efforts to locate her afterward, she managed to elude us." The wizard's sincerity was palpable as he declared, "She's not human. She's a monster. She's been pursuing me for years, seeking vengeance." His gaze locked onto John's, he added, "Your arrival at this juncture must be fate. A giant bear kills out of hunger, but she kills for sport. I am willing to pay any price to have her eliminated." His voice grew more intense. "The fate of the entire continent hangs in the balance. Eliminating Furui is choosing the lesser of 2 evils." He fixed his stare on John, who, after a moment of contemplation, responded nonchalantly, "Not my problem." The wizard was left speechless as John turned and walked away without a second glance. Reflecting on the first episode of the first season of The Witcher, it became evident that the portrayal of the garden was far from serious. Chapter 397, An Encounter with a Curse. Stepping out of the Round Tower, John was deep in thought. Something's off, definitely off, he mused as he approached Marika to lead his horse away. Ever since that bear incident, things have taken a strange turn. Initially, he had considered this place akin to a pensieve, a mere point in time to observe. However, the wizard's recent words had sown seeds of doubt in his mind. The curse of the Black Sun? Lilith, the evil goddess of the night. These elements were foreign to the wizarding world he knew. He was certain of that. The curse of the Black Sun, had it been real, would surely have been documented in magical history. Yet, John found no recollection of such events. If this isn't a memory from the past, then where exactly am I? He pondered. After Marika took Polo away, she didn't follow. John unsheathed his sword, examining the 4 runes etched into its blade, contemplating whether the Witcher's trial had transported him to an alternate world. Time travel? He muttered under his breath, still holding onto the bearskin, uncertain if it was wise to part with it. After some deliberation, he resolved to complete the trial first, knowing well that the likelihood of encountering magical creatures within the town was slim. Thus, he decided to venture out. Mounting his horse, John galloped towards the forest outskirts, unaware that his departure had caught the attention of several individuals, including Fry, the woman cursed by the Black Sun. Deep within the forest, John's search seemed futile, as the demonic presence appeared to have scared away other magical beings. His earlier encounter, which resulted in the loss of a plate of venison, left him with a growing hunger. Near a stream, he resorted to magic, effortlessly catching 2 fish. He then prepared a fire for a simple meal in the wilderness. As he settled down, a figure emerged from the woods. It was Fury, approaching John with a purpose. "You're looking to sell the bearskin?" John inquired, not lifting his gaze. Fury, with a light chuckle, diverted the conversation. "Did you encounter that wizard this morning?" John, focusing on his grilled fish, replied nonchalantly, "You seem well informed. That man fears you." "I was once a princess. Did he mention that?" Fury sat beside John, picking up a fish. "He sent men to kill me in these woods, but I defended myself with my mother's brooch." The fish, though unseasoned, tasted surprisingly rich and not at all fishy, perhaps a testament to the purity of the environment. Fury, savoring the fish, shared her story with a calmness that belied the gravity of her words. "His men violated me, stole from me, and left me to fend for myself." Meeting John's gaze, she continued, "They transformed me from a princess into a cursed being. To survive, I resorted to theft. To live, I had to kill." Her voice, though steady, conveyed a deep-seated desire for vengeance. "I want to kill him," she confessed. John sensed Fury's intentions clearly. Her purposeful approach was the very reason he had chosen to leave the tavern with Marika. "You wish for me to kill the wizard on your behalf?" John set down his fish, shaking his head. "That's a matter for you to resolve." "This is about choosing the lesser evil," Fury insisted, her voice laced with hatred. "He's also marked you to kill me. My future was bright, but now, because of the curse and his actions, everything's been taken from me." Her voice fluctuated with emotion as she spoke of her plight. "While a queen celebrates her victory, I'm here, pleading my case, insisting I'm not a monster." Fury's attempt to maintain composure was in vain. Her anger and frustration were palpable. "I bleed, I feel pain, I laugh, I curse. If wronged, I seek revenge." Seeking validation or perhaps understanding, she posed a question to John. "They label you a monster too. If they attack, wouldn't you defend yourself?" "How do you know I didn't kill him?" John countered, catching Fury off guard. Shaking his head, John spoke with a lightness that belied the gravity of their conversation. "You have to make your own choices. You don't need my guidance for that." With those words, he turned and walked away, leaving Fury to ponder his words. If only she knew of a man named Tom Riddle, she might understand the young demon hunter's vengeful nature. Unlike traditional witchers, who focus on slaying monsters rather than meddling in political affairs, John was different. His reputation as the second king of the wizarding world was built on secrets and skeletons buried in his past. After distancing himself, John sought solitude in the wilderness once again. The presence of another wizard in town did little to pique his interest. Settling down to light a bonfire, John sighed deeply, his thoughts wandering to the meals he missed. "I should have eaten my venison and fish," he lamented. Despite not knowing what Daphne's cooking tasted like, he knew it was peculiar yet sustaining, unlike his current predicament of scavenging for food. Furui found him again, breaking the silence with a question that seemed to come from nowhere. "Do you believe in fate?" This question made John pause, his thoughts drifting to Harry and the destiny he had altered. Despite the unexpectedness of the conversation, John didn't leave when Furui sat down beside him. "I've decided to leave tomorrow," Furui announced suddenly, catching John off guard. His response was indifferent. Their brief acquaintance hardly warranted any emotional attachment from his side. Yet, Furui seemed to think differently, having observed the Witcher since her arrival in the city. As she shared a childhood memory, John found himself distracted by thoughts of fishing again, the taste of the fish still lingering in his mind. However, he was brought back to reality by Furui's hand gently caressing his cheek. He turned his head away, avoiding her touch, which only seemed to perplex and then annoy her. Furui's frustration grew as John continued to dodge her advances. "What are you avoiding?" she demanded, unable to understand his reluctance. Her confession of affection, "I like you, Yadani," was met with silence from John. His lack of response prompted her to question his feelings, to which he replied with reasons that did not concern her suspicions. The revelation of John's age left Furui speechless. Despite his mature appearance and the white streaks in his hair that hinted at his experiences, there was still a youthful innocence about him. "You're telling me you're underage?" she asked incredulously, struggling to reconcile the image of the man before her with his confession. John's sincerity was evident as he corrected, "I'll be 16 soon." Furui was left dumbfounded, realizing the implications of her actions and the seriousness with which she had confessed her feelings to someone so young. The situation unfolded in a way she had not anticipated, leaving her to reflect on the unexpected turn of events. Was I actually considering a child under the age of 16? Furui murmured to herself, covering her face with her hands in an attempt to regain her composure. I need to calm down. After John had declared her freedom, a whirlwind of emotions had engulfed her. Yet, as the initial shock subsided, Furui found herself wrestling with a new perspective. What's wrong with being young? Isn't youth an added advantage? She pondered, her gaze shifting back to John. She hesitated, grappling with her thoughts before finally voicing them with a newfound seriousness. I don't mind. I mind. Thank you, came John's curt reply, his words slicing through the air and causing Furui's hopeful smile to freeze on her face. In an attempt to diffuse the tension, Polo, sensing the awkwardness, nudged John with his head, signaling his hunger and inadvertently lightening the mood. Taking a deep breath to gather her thoughts, Furui announced, I'm leaving tomorrow. Her voice carried a mix of resolve and sadness as she added, Hope to see you again, Yadani. Her words lingered in the air, a soft echo amidst the forest's tranquility, before he turned and walked away, her figure gradually disappearing into the embrace of the trees. The forest seemed to hold its breath, marking the end of an encounter filled with unspoken emotions and the beginning of an uncertain future. Chapter 398, A Choice Made. Furui's words seemed to carry a deeper meaning than John had initially thought. After spending a night in the open field, John found himself missing the comfort of the tent from another world. He had hoped to encounter one or two magical creatures during his time in the forest, but his efforts proved fruitless. The only life he encountered were some squirrels, busily collecting nuts. Catching a squirrel that had dropped from a tree, John gently prodded its cheek, causing the nuts to spill out. After releasing the squirrel, he approached Poirot, noticing the cumbersome bearskin still draped over the horse's back. Now that he wasn't in dire need of money, the bearskin seemed more of a burden than a trophy. I should have it made into a cloak, John mused, taking the bearskin and setting off towards the town on horseback. Although capable of crafting it himself, he He preferred to use the time to find a buyer for the ring he intended to sell. Upon reaching the town, John sensed an unsettling atmosphere. The familiar round tower stood as always, but the market exuded a sense of unease. He found a tailor shop run by a charming woman whose eyes sparkled at the sight of the bearskin. John paid 2 gold coins, requesting that the cloak be made quickly. The tailor, thrilled by the lucrative transaction, eagerly agreed. Leaving the tailor shop, John's next task was to sell the ring. Accustomed to spending galleons freely, he found himself short on funds. Although Emily owed him a significant amount, it wasn't the time to collect. His search for a jeweler was interrupted by an unexpected encounter with familiar faces from the tavern, the men associated with Fu Rui. The group, led by a menacing bald man wielding a large knife, blocked John's path, their intentions clear from their hostile stance and the weapons they brandished. "You're here," the bald man growled, addressing John as the lesser evil, Witcher. The town was celebrating a festival, yet no one dared approach this confrontation. John, preferring to avoid conflict, attempted to defuse the situation. "I'm just passing through. Do you believe me?" he asked, genuinely uninterested in the affairs of either party involved. The tension escalated as one of the men aimed a crossbow at John, forcing him into a decision. John sighed, recognizing the predicament he was in. "So, what's your plan?" he inquired, curious about Fu Rui's intentions. The bald man revealed their ultimatum. If the wizard they sought did not surrender, they would kill everyone in the town. John couldn't help but look at them in disbelief, finding their strategy not only crude, but ineffective against someone as cunning as their target. An argument in the distance caught John's attention. It was the wizard's voice, defiantly refusing to yield to Fu Rui's threats. The wizard's stance was starkly different from the noble image he had projected the day before, choosing the safety of himself over the lives of the townspeople. "What are you thinking?" A rough voice snapped John back to the present. The 7 men eyed him warily, unsure of how the Witcher would respond to their standoff. John realized he was caught in a moral dilemma, forced to choose between intervening in a conflict that was not his own or standing by as innocent lives were threatened. Despite their bravado, the sight of John alone was enough to instill a sense of nervousness in his adversaries. When a man armed with a crossbow took aim and fired at John, the arrow, propelled through the air with lethal intent, was abruptly halted mid-flight by a simple gesture from John's raised hand. Observing the suspended arrow, John sensed an unusual quality about it. Could this be a weapon engineered specifically to target wizards? He mused, noting its resemblance to the magical constructs he was familiar with. The confrontation escalated quickly. A bald man, brandishing a large knife, charged at John with a ferocious roar. However, his aggression was short-lived. With a mere look from John, the man's body seized up and he collapsed, lifeless. The others, undeterred, advanced towards John, who, drawing his silver sword, engaged them with a blend of magic and martial prowess. With precise movements, he disarmed and dispatched his attackers, leaving only the crossbowman standing. Without even a glance, John neutralized this last foe with a wave of his hand, sending him crashing into a wall. As John prepared to sheath his sword, a new challenge presented itself. "Yardani!" The cry came from Fori, who had taken Marika, the girl who had guided John the previous day, as a hostage. Fury's eyes burned with a mix of anger and sorrow as she threatened to kill everyone unless Stregobor appeared. Her desperation was palpable, like a lioness robbed of her cub, her blade menacingly close to Marika's skin. John attempted to use his magic against Fury, only to find it ineffective. This revelation led him to speculate about Fury's possible resistance to magic, reminiscent of Hagrid's giant heritage. Switching tactics, John tried a different spell, but Fury remained unaffected, even as the environment around her succumbed to the magic's force. The duel between John and Fury was intense. Fury, skilled in dual-wielding a longsword and a shortsword, launched a relentless assault. However, John's defense was impenetrable. In a decisive move, John used his wand to deliver a silent, striking blow to Fury's hand, followed by a flurry of attacks from his silver sword that left Fury severely wounded and retreating. With Fury disarmed and at his mercy, John faced a moment of truth. Fury, recognizing her defeat, made a final, unexpected request for a hug. John, unmoved, delivered the final blow. Standing over Fury's bloodied form, John was left to reflect on the violence that had unfolded. "I was really just passing by," he remarked, his tone tinged with melancholy, underscoring the unintended path of confrontation and bloodshed he had traversed. Did these people not listen to others? Suddenly, Harry felt like a sage amidst the chaos. As the commotion settled, the onlookers in the market began to approach slowly, their eyes wide at the brutality of the fight that had just unfolded. Trescobel, too, made his way through the crowd, his gaze fixated on the fallen fry with an unsettling excitement. "Marika, Marika!" he called out loudly, and upon Marika's arrival, he exclaimed, "Fetch me a cart. I'm taking this body to the tower for an autopsy." His eyes gleamed with a mad scientist's fanaticism, showing a disturbing disregard for human life. John, observing the scene, tapped the wizard on the shoulder with the flat of his sword, snapping Stregobor out of his morbid fascination. It was only then that Stregobor seemed to remember the presence of the Witcher. The sight of the blood-stained blade brought a flicker of fear to his eyes. "Are you out of your mind? Her mutation could spread to others, and these people will follow her lead," he protested, mistakenly thinking John opposed the dissection out of concern for the mutation. "You're following her path, aren't you?" he accused. "I suggest you don't touch him," John warned, noticing the crowd around them growing larger. However, Stregobor, emboldened by the number of onlookers, found his confidence and retorted with sarcasm, "Demon hunter, you've killed people in the streets of Balvi, engaged in lynching, and defied the law." Stregobor's words stirred the crowd into a frenzy. Insults were hurled at John from all directions. "Bastard!" shouted a member of the crowd. The tavern owner spat, "You are a beast." A woman in beige clothes accused, "You killed her," while a long-haired man called out, "Go on, you butcher." Stregobor, smug in his perceived victory, approached John and taunted, "You've made your choice, and you'll never know if it was right or wrong." His smile was infuriating. The crowd's anger escalated, and a man threw a stone at John, which landed at his feet. Soon, more stones flew towards him. Suddenly, a stone aimed at John halted midair, stopping before it could strike him. John's expression remained calm as he sheathed his sword, his gaze fixed on the now nervous wizard before him. He leaned in and whispered menacingly, "Who made you think I would simply endure this indignity?" The wizard, who had been smirking moments before, froze. John had sheathed his sword not in surrender, but to more easily draw his wand. "And another thing." John's voice dropped to a chilling whisper as a white light flickered on his wand. "Who told you I'm just a witcher?" With a wave of his wand, the dynamics of the confrontation shifted dramatically, leaving the moral high ground Stregobor thought he held in tatters. Chapter 399, The Destruction of the City Wall. Stregobor believed that John had sided with Fury, while Fury was convinced that John had chosen Stregobor. It was a peculiar situation. Initially, John had no intention of intervening, preferring instead to let them make their own choices. From Stregobor's perspective, his actions were justifiable. He sought to eliminate a girl cursed by the Black Sun, thereby preventing the evil night goddess from descending upon the mainland. He even considered himself a saint for his efforts. On the other hand, Fury viewed herself as a victim. She had been violated by hunters sent by Stregobor, pursued relentlessly, and exiled from her rightful kingdom. Her actions were driven by vengeance, a response to the desperate circumstances forced upon her. Yet Stregobor remained indifferent to the threat posed to the townspeople, believing his life to be of greater value than those of the common folk. To him, Fury's potential massacre was merely a testament to the cruelty of the Black Sun's curse, further justifying his own righteousness. John was certain that if Stregobor refused to emerge, Fury would indeed lead her followers to slaughter everyone. He had previously mentioned the dichotomy between villains and saints. A true saint would step forward for the sake of a child or even a stranger. However, Stregobor's actions, imprisoning the girl and dissecting her, were far from saintly. He was a villain in the truest sense, as was Fury. When two villains clash, they prioritize their own interests, indifferent to the suffering of others. Stregobor was a wizard endowed with magic, while Fury possessed a body impervious to magical harm. Her sword could not breach his magical barriers, nor could his spells injure her. They were at an impasse. each unable to overcome the other. This deadlock made it clear that there would be no victors in their conflict. Aware of this, they both sought assistance from an external force, a witcher. Witchers, with their exceptional swordsmanship and expertise in combating magical beings, represented a potential solution to their stalemate. Thus, both Stregobor and Fury attempted to sway John to their side, hoping to tip the balance in their favor. Unlike a typical witcher, John was also a wizard, which influenced his perspective. Stregobor hoped to leverage societal pressure, believing that the witcher's duty to protect humanity would compel John to act in his favor. However, Stregobor underestimated the importance of humility when dealing with formidable adversaries, especially one who had recently vanquished another formidable foe. The townspeople, hurling stones and insults, were oblivious to the fact that without John's intervention, they would have fallen victim to the innocent woman and her followers, all because of their allegiance to Stregobor. They were guided solely by their perceptions and beliefs, even going so far as to demand John's departure, as Marika did, saying, "Leave, Yadani, you are not welcome here." Stregobor believed he'd continue his experiments and expel the Witcher. However, his confidence was shattered when a beam of white light streaked towards the city wall. In that moment, Stregobor realized his grave miscalculation. With a combination of level 6 mana and a level 6 shattering curse, even without the aid of the silver hand or a magic crystal, the spell possessed enough power to demolish the city wall. The wand emitted a flickering white light, trailing a destructive arc of electricity that reduced the wall to rubble with a thunderous roar. The roar of an angry dragon silenced the crowd. Their stone-throwing halted as they stared in horror at the demon hunter they had just been bullying under the guise of morality. "You, how could you?" Stregobor's eyes widened in disbelief. He had never heard of a witcher wielding a wand. As a wizard, full of arrogance, he looked down on demon hunters, mutants created through the experiments of wizards. Though he was aware that some witchers could muster what he considered crude and insignificant camp magic, it did nothing to change his disdain. Wizards, proud and aloof, likened themselves to seagulls perched high upon their towers. Yet, the burst of white light from the wand, now emitting white smoke from being overloaded, shattered Stregobor's illusions and his fleeting sense of victory. John's gaze swept over Stregobor, then settled on the townspeople. His voice was gentle as he spoke. "Since you dared to attack me, it shows you possess the courage to face the dangers lurking outside." His smile was benign, yet his words sent shivers down everyone's spine. "Use your stones against the man-eating monsters outside, with the same bravery you showed just now." The city walls, once the defense of Balvi town, now lay in ruins, leaving the town as vulnerable as an exposed maiden, attracting all manner of malevolent forces. "One more thing, Stregobor," John said, turning his attention back to the wizard, a chuckle in his voice. "I suggest you not cease your autopsies, but—" Before he could finish, everyone's attention snapped to Furui, who they thought dead, still clutching her small sword. Suddenly, her fingers twitched, and her eyes snapped open. "I didn't kill her," John stated, just as Stregobor collapsed in shock. Furui, covered in thick blood and looking like a specter from hell, her neck awkwardly bent from the force of John's sword, still gripped her blood-stained sword, and where Stregobor had stood, only his feet remained, severed at the ankles by Furui, his look of smug satisfaction replaced by sheer terror. "You are not dead. She is not dead." The wizard, who had been so confident in his plans, now scrambled in the mud, pleading, "Help me, demon hunter. Kill her. Kill her quickly." John, like a maestro after a concert, carefully sheathed his wand and looked down at Stregobor with a hint of pity. "Sorry, I refuse to be a murderer. Didn't you argue against lynching and flouting the law on the streets of Balvi?" With a chuckle, he stepped back, avoiding Stregobor's desperate attempt to grasp his ankle, and addressed the terrified crowd. "See, I haven't killed anyone." Now, 7 of Furui's men, previously incapacitated, began to stir, weapons still in hand. John waved to the crowd, his smile graceful. "Your murderers and monsters are departing, good people of Balvi." He then walked away, the mud beneath his feet like a meticulously laid brown carpet. The black-haired witcher moved through the crowd without choosing sides, helping or harming anyone. As Stregobor had said, all choices are fraught with uncertainty. Stregobor's own choices had led to this moment. Choices are mutual, and neutrality is the creed of a demon hunter. This counterattack served as a declaration from the second king of the magical world. A king cannot be humiliated. John hoped the righteous and pure-hearted would understand this. As John left the vicinity of Balvi, he reflected on the fortunate timing of the tailor who had cut the bear skin before becoming engrossed in the spectacle. Noticing several pairs of scissors broken in the tailor's shop, John, ever the merchant and alchemist, adhered to the principles of fair trade and left behind 2 gold coins as payment, without a second thought. It was uncertain whether the boss would be able to secure it. Rumors of Balvi's grim fate had reached him from afar. As a wizard, Stregobor possessed exceptional skills in evasion. Meanwhile, Furui was incapacitated due to an injury inflicted by John, rendering her immobile. Stregobor, having escaped Balvi in a disgraceful state, abandoned those he had once rallied. The people, who had previously shown fervor in prosecuting demon hunters, displayed a stark contrast in bravery when confronted with a genuine threat. Opting for flight over fight, they turned their backs to the enemy, leading to their downfall by the hundreds. The fate of Furui remained a mystery, as the kingdom initiated a relentless pursuit of the malevolent faction. Rumors swirled about a figure known as Shrike. Concurrently, tales of the Black Witcher spread far and wide, seemingly reinforcing the adage that witchers are devoid of emotions. However, John dismissed such claims as nonsense. At that moment, he was fixated on a notice pinned to the bulletin board, which was causing him a considerable headache. Name, Yadani in black, level, extremely dangerous. Reward, 1,000 gold coins. It appeared that his notoriety had a significant price. It seems I am quite valuable, he mused, a mix of irony and contemplation in his tone. Chapter 400, The Wanted Black Witcher. John had become a wanted man, with a bounty on his head that was enticingly high. His reputation as the Black Witcher was as captivating and feared as the tales of a forest demon or a giant bear. Cloaked in bearskin, he had now made his way to the capital, with 2 objectives in mind: to seek information about the monolith from Emily, and to explore the enigmatic place known as Tritorg. The kingdom once enlisted demon hunters to vanquish the Kongsang Banshee, yet it appears tranquil here, John mused as he strolled down the central avenue. The street was spacious, accommodating horse-drawn carriages to travel abreast. The citizens seemed more affluent than those in Balvi, with some ladies adorned in lavish makeup, accompanied by their personal servants. Concealing his silver sword beneath his cloak, John's black hair blended into the shadows. He entered a jewelry shop and emerged with a pouch of gold coins, which he secured to his belt. As he continued his walk, he encountered a young man boasting loudly on the street corner. For a mere 3 gold pieces, I dare to spy on the royal witch's bathing pool, the young man proclaimed, drawing laughter from his companions. Stop your foolish bragging, Wu Kei. You don't even know where the royal witch resides, they teased, irking Wu Kei. I've seen the royal witch with my own eyes, Wu Kei retorted, only to be interrupted by a new voice. I'll offer you 10 silver coins to guide me to the royal witch's abode, John interjected, casually flipping the coins in his hand. Feeling underestimated, Wu Kei demanded, Don't jest. 10 gold coins and I'll lead you there. John coolly replied, 9 silver coins. As John began to lower his offer, Wu Kei's frustration grew. 8, John continued, unfazed. Panicking, Wu Kei blurted out, 5 gold coins and I'll take you right now. 7 silver coins, John countered, his gaze unwavering. Wu Kei, now visibly agitated, conceded, 3 gold coins and we leave immediately. 6 silver coins, John persisted. 1 gold coin, just 1, and I'll take you there, Wu Kei desperately bargained. 5, John began, but Wu Kei hastily agreed to the 6 silver coins, exasperated by John's stoic demeanor. Give me the money first, Wu Kei demanded, his patience worn thin. John tossed 3 silver coins as a deposit, which Wu Kei clumsily dropped. His companion swiftly picked it up, intending to pocket it, but Wu Kei reclaimed his money after a brief scuffle. It's my money, you scoundrel, Wu Kei snapped before instructing John, follow me closely. Unbeknownst to Wu Kei, he was guiding a wanted black witcher. They navigated through a labyrinth of alleys until they reached the residence of the royal witches, a tower adjacent to the castle, shrouded in overgrown greenery and seemingly abandoned. "Hand over the rest of the money," Wick demanded upon arrival. John complied, and Wick hastily retreated, leaving John to uncover the entrance hidden by magic. With a flick of his wand, John revealed an archway in the wall, leading him into the tower. He ascended the winding staircase to the topmost floor, where he found Emily sprawled on the ground, engrossed in an ancient document. "Didn't I say not to disturb me?" Emily snapped, her temper flaring until she caught sight of John. Her expression shifted from anger to terror. "It's you. Why are you here?" she stammered, fear evident in her voice as she noticed the wanted notice for the Black Witcher. "I'm here to settle a debt," John declared, advancing towards her, causing Emily to panic. "Don't move," she exclaimed, her voice laced with urgency. "Be careful not to step on those documents. They are ancient and invaluable." Emily, a witch confined within the Black Eagle Tower, yet undeterred in her pursuit of knowledge, exclaimed as she hastily gathered the scattered papers. She treated these documents with the reverence of treasured artifacts, meticulously organizing them. Once her task was complete, an awkward silence filled the room. Emily's pen, chant for spreading her research materials far and wide, left the space devoid of furniture, save for a solitary bed. John, observing the room's sparse furnishings, couldn't help but comment with a wry smile. "You didn't expect me to visit the capital, did you?" Emily, caught off guard, laughed nervously. Indeed, she hadn't anticipated John's arrival, especially given his current status as a fugitive. The Queen's proclamation branding the black-haired Witcher as wanted had taken Emily by surprise. Furthermore, rumors of John's formidable prowess, including an incident where he allegedly severed Master Stregobor's legs, had reached her ears through the Warlock Brotherhood. The notion of a Witcher wielding powerful magic was unfathomable to them, and John's actions had only heightened their wariness. "Yadani, I'll ensure you receive the gold coins as soon as possible," Emily promised. "There's no rush," John replied, his gaze softening upon noticing Emily's apprehension. He then recalled a previous conversation. "You mentioned that there might be individuals within the king's court knowledgeable about the monument." Emily quickly corrected him. "I said it was a possibility." She made a move to retrieve a document John had picked up, but hesitated, wary of his fearsome reputation. "That's an ancient text. You wouldn't understand it," she cautioned, though her words betrayed a hint of disdain. John, unfazed, examined the document closely, murmuring, "The celestial spheres meet?" Emily was taken aback, her disbelief evident. "Do you understand it?" she finally managed to ask. "Let's just say I've done my homework," John replied nonchalantly, tossing the document back to Emily, who caught it with urgency. "This is an ancient text. I need to study it thoroughly to grasp its meaning. How could you possibly understand it?" Emily protested, her pride slightly wounded. "I've learned a thing or two," John said, his response leaving Emily at a loss for words. The document had sparked a realization in John about the convergence of celestial spheres and the overlapping of worlds, concepts previously unknown to him. This revelation led him to ponder the nature of the trial he was undergoing and the reality of the world around him. "This wizarding world is like a box filled with ice, concealing countless secrets," John mused, his curiosity piqued. "Well, since you're capable of deciphering these ancient texts, perhaps you should seek the answers on your own," Emily suggested, a hint of embarrassment in her voice. She then mentioned the palace library, renowned for its vast collection of historical documents and knowledge, second only to Neubau. "I accepted the position of royal wizard mainly because of my fascination with the library," she confessed, her eyes gleaming with anticipation. "Could you, perhaps, translate the materials you've read for me?" Despite her reluctance to admit it, Emily recognized that John's understanding of ancient writings surpassed her own. Seeking help from another could potentially diminish her standing within the wizarding community. John, intrigued by the prospect of delving deeper into the world's mysteries, silently acknowledged the challenge. John agreed to the proposal with a sense of purpose. Given that the library was nestled within the palace's grand walls, his access was restricted to times when Emily, the princess, was present. To maintain appearances and ensure John's seamless entry into the palace, it was publicly declared that he would serve as Emily's bodyguard. However, Once behind the library's ancient doors, their roles transformed. John delved into the depths of the documents, his eyes scanning the pages for hidden truths, while Emily diligently took notes by his side. This routine continued for several days, a testament to their dedication and the urgency of their quest. The turning point came when the rune engraved on John's sword flickered to life, a silent but clear signal that his time in the palace was drawing to a close. It was time to resume his trial, to face the challenges that lay ahead. "Where can I find magical creatures?" John inquired, his mind already racing towards his next adventure. Emily, ever helpful, suggested a location known for its mystical allure, the Blue Mountain, rumored to be home to flying lions. This was not just a mere suggestion, it was a kingdom-endorsed quest, promising rewards for its resolution. John, recognizing the opportunity, decided to set his sights on this new destination. Throughout his stay, Emily had been an invaluable ally, navigating the complexities of palace politics and gathering the information John needed. "I can never repay you enough for your assistance," he admitted, feeling a deep sense of gratitude. As they parted ways, Emily, with a sense of solemnity, escorted John out of the town. She was cloaked, her features obscured, a precaution to maintain her anonymity. John, acknowledging her support, left her with a parting gift. "Consider this a token of my appreciation for all you've done," he said, hinting at a surprise he had left for her. As Emily watched John mount his horse and ride away, a pang of sadness touched her heart. Unbeknownst to her, they were not alone in their farewell. A group bearing the mark of the wolf slayers silently observed their departure, then set off on horseback, leaving the capital behind. This moment marked the beginning of a new chapter for both John and Emily. For John, it was the continuation of his quest, filled with unknown dangers and potential glory. For Emily, it was a return to her duties, albeit with the hope that their paths might cross again. The bond they had formed, forged in the pursuit of knowledge and the face of adversity, was not easily broken. And as John ventured into the unknown, the gift he left behind would serve as a lasting reminder of their time together, a symbol of gratitude and a beacon of hope for future reunions.